Good evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of University Place, and I'm calling to order the University Place City Council regular meeting for February 21st, 2023. And we can start with a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Councilmember Bleasy is excused. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Present.
And Mayor Worthington.
And Mayor Worthington present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Excellent. We can proceed. So with that in mind, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Would you please rise? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Councilmember Keel, our second.
Very good.
And Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment. I move to amend the agenda to add an item before item 7 for council consideration, and it's to adopt a resolution approving an interlocal agreement between the city and Pierce County Flood Control Zone District for district grant-funded projects.
Okay. And we have a motion. Is there a second for the amended
Keel,
amendment?
our second.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Is there any objections to the addition of the item before item 7 having to do with flood zoning district? I don't see any objections. The amendment is accepted. Is there any objections to the approval of the agenda as amended? Any objections? I don't see any, and our agenda is approved, and we can proceed with the evening. With that in mind, it brings us to public comments and a chance to hear from folks on a variety of subjects. Emmy, would you like to explain our process there for us, please? So, let's see.
This time, citizens have 3 minutes to address the council on matters not scheduled for public hearing or council consideration. State law prohibits the use of this forum to promote or oppose any candidate for public office or ballot measure. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please provide your name and address for the records. Also, the instructions are on screen for those of you who are watching on YouTube or UPTV.
All right, thank you. So if you can take a moment, if you're watching remotely, to look at those instructions if you choose to make a comment, and make yourself known. We'll provide an opportunity for comment. For those in the council room, we have several people who have signed up. Many of these, or several of these, are for agenda items. And as we come to that agenda item, we'll have another opportunity for comment. We'll invite you up then. At this stage, this is an opportunity for general comments that are not addressing an item on tonight's agenda. And let's see, I want from the materials that I have here, it looks that might be the case for Peggy Dawson. In terms of signed up, the issue that you're speaking to, at least as noted here, doesn't appear to be on tonight's agenda. Is this the opportunity you'd like to come up and speak? Peggy Dawson.
Yes.
All right. Great. Thank you.
One thing I noticed, I don't know where I'm supposed to.
So if you want to have a seat right there in front of the monitor, you're going to find a mic on in front of you on the table, and you'll want to keep that fairly close to you, and we'll make sure it gets turned on with the help of our city attorney and AV technician.
Well, it's funny that you're talking about this because I was here a couple of weeks ago and I couldn't hear anyone. So I have a pair of hearing aids in today, and it's still slightly difficult. So I guess the sound goes up. I'm not sure.
Right. It can be challenging. I also wear hearing aids and just got one of them back today, having been gone for about 4 days without it. Was being repaired. But so I have a sense of what you speak of.
Okay.
But, if you'd like to start with your name and address, and then we'd be happy to hear about your
My
comments.
name is Peggy Dawson, and I live at Hidden Hills at 7113 32nd Street, Court West, apartment 22-203. 98466.
Thank you.
So, I'm here tonight because my grandson was hit by a hit-and-run driver last month, January 9th, and it brought to bear information that we don't have cameras at our main intersections. Thankfully, my grandson did not have any severe injuries, but at the age of 15, and being very physically fit, he actually jumped on the hood of the car. If he had been struck, it could have been deadly. And so this has brought to our family's observation the need for cameras in our town. I noticed that you all discussed last time about the growing need for housing and such in our area, and that our area is growing, and yet our police department and our traffic equipment hasn't kind of caught up to the times. And I just wanted to say that I think it's vital and very important that our police coverage, traffic coverage, and technologies stay ahead of the curve, ahead of the issues, instead of trying to catch up and deal with crisis management. So I would really appreciate if, as a council and a mayor, that you would take into consideration the seriousness of our need for speed enforcement, speed cameras, traffic, maybe red light cameras. Since this incident happened, I am so much more observant of what's going on around me as far as the behavior of other drivers. And it's just been an eye-opening experience. I asked my grandson what he would like me to share with you tonight, and his response was that we need to have cameras at all the intersections, and that that basically that was the big thing. Also, speed enforcement. So he was in the right. He was walking at the crosswalk. He had time on the clock, and the driver was making a left-hand turn, and instead of braking for him, the car sped up. And so I want to commend the first responders and the police for responding so quickly and kindly. They did an excellent job in taking care of him and getting him, my daughter was able to then take him to the urgent care, and then he had to go to Mary Bridge for further x-rays. But thankfully nothing was broken, but he was, pained for several days. And he still shook up about it. In fact, we all are, because we realize how close he came to dying. And I'm sure that you, as a council, would not know what to say to me if I had told you that there was a different tragic ending to this story, rather than he was badly hurt, but he wasn't killed. So I think that we need to take this opportunity as a wake-up call and be more aggressive and assertive when it comes to traffic safety.
Well, thank you.
So
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
that's, I hope that's not longer than 3 minutes, but maybe it is.
A little bit longer, but in any case, that's all right. We've reached our limit, though. So, very good. Well, Ms. Dawson, thank you for sharing those concerns with us, and I'm glad to
Yes.
hear your grandson, though, is doing well at this stage. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's takes a while to get over something like that, but he's working on it.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Certainly. Do we have any other members of the public in the council chamber that would like to make a comment to council about an item that's not on the agenda? Please.
My name is Dennis Flan, 2623 Lemons Beach Road. The sales tax has been called the most regressive tax. In my opinion, property tax leads by far in being regressive. If you have money and spend it, sales tax is due. If you own a home, taxes are due. But even if you spend no money on your home, taxes increase in perpetuity. Well-meaning tax levies, such as schools and fire service, outpace incomes of many seniors and low-income persons. The school district and fire district, as you know, will be seeking new levies this summer and fall. The attempt to preempt these levies to pass a police levy more than doubles the cost of joining with the others in the elections. I heard what I considered somewhat condescending comments from council members about the electorate being unable to understand what Prop 1 meant on the ballot. Too confusing. In the upcoming election, with one title, that is preposterous. I did hear a spark of rebellion against over-levying schools and fire districts, but politics reigns supreme. Our police officers deserve our respect. Our legislature does not seem to want to support their efforts. Many bills have been passed that have hamstrung their ability to do their jobs. It appears that is not going to change in 2023. Good luck to everyone in Washington. The ship's rudder is broken and no one at the helm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Flan. Any other comments from the public, from our members of the audience here? Please, sir, come forward and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Rick Noreen, 3725 Brookside Way. And I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of you on my front doorstep during times of election. And I've never been to a council meeting before. And I apologize for that. I, like probably most citizens, go to work, take care of kids, go to sporting events, and yet some of my presence here is based on the rhetoric that I'm hearing, not only from the placards that we get out in the mail, but just from the community and social media and those type of things. So I too am concerned. I'm concerned about our state, and I'm concerned about our city. I've been a resident here for, well, 20 years, and I've seen it change a lot. And it's frustrating to try and get off of Highway 16, and traffic now is so backed up that you can't even get to 27th, or you can't get to 40th because it's just a roadblock, and we're adding more and more high occupancy residences. And one of my greatest concerns with the taxing structure, and I also want to support the police department. I think whatever we can do to improve security and improve their work life is important. But I just looked at my taxes, and we're seeing a 9.8% increase in property tax this year, after a 4.9 and then a 2.5%. So in the last 3 years, I've seen my taxes go up $1,500. And the question that I would have is, where is that money going? And if I know I can't be the only one that's seeing these kind of increases, so you spread that across all the citizens of UP, and there should be some pretty significant increases that I would hope would cover some of these costs that Prop 1 was talking about. And I think it's important to understand, it was voted down, which I think is the first time I can ever remember something in UP being voted down. And I don't think it was a message to the police department. I think it's a message to you all that we're reaching the limit. And I hope you hear, everyone in the city, that the taxing is reaching its pinnacle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norrie. Appreciate hearing your comments as well. Any other comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda? Please come forward. And if you can, after you get settled in, introduce yourself, and your address would be helpful, and share your thoughts. You would have 3 minutes with us.
Thank you. My name is David Hufford, and I live on 3620 Soundview Drive. And I guess I have the same kind of thing. I worked for the city of Tacoma for 33 years, and I was the safety officer for the wastewater operations all that time. So I was in safety a long time, and I looked forward and processed that kind of thing, and we never had a death in that many years, and wastewater is one of the worst in the country. So I was thankful. I'd like to talk about the taxes too. In the last 2 years, it went up $1,000 each year. And now we're going to add, to me, it's around 500 and some more. And it just seems to go on and on and on. And we've been retired for 20 years. Do we have a job? No, we're retired. So what is our income is actually dropping because of all the taxes and everything else. We have less money to spend every year. So it's very important that you think about retired people and doing this, because I just can't take a lot of $1,000 a year increases in my taxes. I talked to the police officer when I went to his presentation, and to me, some of the worst things on the road are all the vehicles, trucks, and cars that are not lawful. They're all over the place, and they cause accidents, and yet nobody, I called our police, I called the police in a different city to check them, nobody is even looking at those cars and trucks that don't have mud flaps and have wide tires and throwing rocks in your windshield. I've had 2 in my car just recently. And that's not cheap. And then on Soundview, you wouldn't think, we never had anything going wrong on Soundview, but now cars broken into, windows broken, things stolen. I have a RV, and that catalytic converter was stolen, $2,200 to get a new one. So all those things are going on, and I would like to see all these minor things taken care of, and the cars that are driving our roads be legal, because you can't see them on the highway when it's raining. And I showed my wife, I says, there's a car ahead of us up there. I can't see it, she says. Well, that's because it's got big tires. It's throwing up all this mist against your windshield. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Appreciate your comments as well. Anyone else who would like to make a comment this evening here in the council room? Anyone else? If not, Emmy, do we see anybody online?
Mayor, I don't see anyone online.
All right. And again, you'll have other opportunities as the items, your comments may be related, as I can see from people who have signed up, to issues that we have in front of us tonight on the agenda. We take those comments before we vote on that item. So with that in mind, I believe our public comments session is completed for this evening, and we can now move on to consideration of the consent agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
Okay, motion to approve the consent agenda is proposed. Is there a second?
Keel, I second.
And a second. Are there any objections to the consent agenda as proposed? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. That brings us to our first item, which is now the Pierce County Flood District Interlocal Agreement. And I think that Mr. Jack Eklund may be here to tell us about that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Jack Eklund, Director of Public Works. Tonight I'm bringing to you for your consideration an interlocal agreement proposed between the City of University Place and the Pierce County Flood Control District. Recently, the city was awarded a $650,000 grant from the Pierce County Flood Control District to address stormwater flooding in the vicinity of Grandview Drive, Olympic Boulevard, and Brookside Way. In order to access these funds, the city is required to enter into the interlocal agreement that's attached in your council bill. This agreement requires the project to be complete by the end of the year and all billings be submitted by March 31st, 2024, and I can confirm that the city will be able to meet those obligations. With that, I recommend entering into this agreement, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Eklund. Appreciate the background and any questions that we have. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jack, is this a one-time only grant, or is it possible for renewal?
Yeah, it was a project-specific grant that we applied for. Actually, it was a parting gift from David Swindell. He did the application and got the money shortly before he retired, so it was nice.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Jack, just out of curiosity, how many people applied for this type of funds, and where do we land? Was there more than just one award, or were the only awardee, or the only one that submitted?
I don't have the exact numbers. I know there were several that applied. We were the top-rated project, so we had the top rating. I know there were not all applicants that applied were able to get funding, although they did their best to try to spread it around. But we were the top-rated project, and I certainly can follow up with you if you get the actual the numbers.
Okay,
Afterwards.
no problem. Thank you, staff, for going after this grant. That's the only ways we all know that we can afford to help our communities in need, and this is one of them, so thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you. On this, I know we did some improvements to the Brookside Soundview a few years back. Is this going to be a continuation of the storm drain project there?
It links into it. It's more the upstream portion, so it's upstream of those improvements. It will address, we have some pipes that are under capacity, basically around the vicinity of the Olympic roundabout, and then as it heads, there's an easement through that church property, and then we have some issues along Brookside where we have capacity problems, mostly driven by debris issues, and so part of this is going to address a better debris barriers and ways to kind of reduce that on Brookside. So there's increased piping size, some detention tanks, as well as then some kind of debris prevention measures.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of water spill off in that area. Is there going to be any road improvements?
For this one, it's really just going to be, other than some side, the edge of road drainage, the ditch and culvert treatments, the basic road improvements would just be patching back existing and repair any kind of like potholes that have been addressed as part of that
The
flooding.
patches?
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one, you said Grandview Drive to Palisades, is that all going to be along Grandview to where Palisades hooks into Grandview?
It's not Palisades. Palisades is more along Brookside to where it ties into Palisades.
Oh, that one, okay,
Yeah.
up from
It's
the hill there.
Yeah, the ditch
going down.
on Brookside as it goes down the hill.
Okay. All right, because I was confused. It says Grandview to Palisades with a larger pipe. Okay.
Yeah, it's most of the piping would be at Grandview and Olympic, and then heading through the roundabout basically, and then turning left through the church property, and then down Brookside. It's a combination of roadside ditch improvements and culvert improvements to reduce the debris blockage that's been happening.
Any landscaping to Brookside Park there for the debris runoff?
The only thing we'd be doing for this, because limited to just storm drainage, would be restoring any kind of land disturbing and vegetation disturbing activities.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mayor. Jack, thanks for your presentation. It sounds like another one of the great projects that you and your staff do all the time. So I'm pretty excited about that. The question I have is, and if you mentioned it and I missed it, I'm sorry. Typically, there's match that come with that. So did you mention the match? And if we do have, where is it coming from and how much is it?
The match in this is about, Oh, right now, it's projected at a million, no, 800,000. And we currently have a budget adopted actually last year, because we initially adopted $1 million budget to address this problem, and costs as these days have going through the roof. So then we realized all of a sudden what we budgeted weren't enough to do the work, and so that's why we need to get the grant. So we've still maintained that budget in the capital, so that's already addressed in our current budget.
So,
Please go ahead.
oh, thank you. So we budget, so what we have in the budget is 800,000, or is that the match, the 800,000?
Our budget's $1 million. Our minimum match is 850, but then we have still, with our budget, if there were some cost increase, to address that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Then, Jack, a couple of quick questions on my side, then we'll make another round. But one of those is, so the $1 million or so that was budgeted, that's not general fund, that is the
Stormwater management funds, yes.
Right, and so that's the, if you will, the color of money that we're limited to this type of project to use those funds for.
Exactly.
Okay, good, thank you. And then the other thing, what's the timing on this?
Our plan would be to go out to construction in this summer, and then the duration of this project would probably be about a 2 to 3 month project, so it'd be done by the early fall.
Sometimes our stormwater projects need to fit within certain environmental windows. Do we have that issue on this one?
Not too much here. Our main concern is just to get any ground disturbing activity stabilized before the rains hit. But there's no fish bearing streams that are impacted, which is nice. Becomes messier then.
Yeah, absolutely. Councilmember Fleming, you had a comment or a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jack, just a quick follow-up. What kind of disruption, if any, can the residents expect from this project, and how long would it last?
There'll be some disruption in, the biggest disruption will be while we're replacing the pipe in the Grandview Olympic Boulevard roundabout area. And I anticipate that would be, it will require some one-lane traffic. We wouldn't ever stop traffic completely, but there'll be some of that. That's probably it'd be off and on for about a month is what would be anticipated, but it would be opened up by the end of the day each day. And so the PM and AM and PM peak hours should be still generally free-flowing traffic.
Are we going to provide notification to the residents in that area when you start that project?
Yep, we will.
All right, very good. Well, it looks to me like we may be ready for a vote on this issue. So with that...
I need to make a motion.
Public
oh,
comment.
excuse me.
Yeah, public comment, and then...
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I thought we had an opening motion, but I guess we didn't,
No,
did
we
we?
don't, no.
We do need a motion. Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I make a motion to adopt a resolution, no, excuse me, point of order. I think we need public comment first, and then I'll make the motion.
Public comment before the motion. Very good. So is there any public comment on this issue? We follow the same procedure we had previously. Anyone in the room that would like to make comments, you're welcome to. We have 3 minutes available to you, or people online. You can use the process that's displayed on the screen and contact us for online comment or telephone comment. Anyone here in the room that would like to make comment at this point? Please, sir.
So I'm affected by this, which is super exciting. Can I ask a question?
Yes, we may not get a direct answer at this point. We may ask staff to respond back to you later, but yes, you may ask a question.
So we've always had a culvert problem there on Brookside. We're the first house down on Brookside, and it fills up with debris, just like you're talking about. And so the question would be, will that culvert be increased in size?
So, yeah, we don't usually do back and
Okay,
forth.
so that was my question. So
Okay,
really,
and
there's
someone will get
it's
to
just a
you.
comment period.
So
more than a question.
I believe that Jack may have some comments for you afterwards then, or a little later on tonight, so you can discuss those
It's definitely
details.
badly needed in the area. We have 6 to 8 feet of water sometimes in our culvert area, so.
Well, that's
Thank
good to know. You get a two for tonight. So. All right, good. Then, let's see, any other comments? Anything online, Emmy? Okay, thank you. And then we get to make a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to adopt a resolution
Point of order, Mr.
approving.
Mayor.
Excuse me, Mayor.
We do have one person for
Oh,
public comment.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, please do come forward.
I live on Soundview, and I take that road to get to my house. Since I worked with the wastewater and salt and stormwater, at one time we were having problems with the line flooding down in the below area, and I had mentioned to whoever it was that was in charge at that time that when it comes across the street to the park, there's that big gully, and you could make a place where you could get and you could take stormwater and store it and let it out at a certain rate so that the sewers down below don't get overtaxed and come up out into the street. I live next to the storm sewer when it goes down the hill, and at one time it failed, and that was a long time being fixed and not fun.
Thank you. All right, any other comments from our group with us tonight? Okay, seeing none, I think we probably are now ready for that
Okay,
motion.
I don't see any either, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to adopt a resolution approving an interlocal agreement between the city and Pierce County Flood Control Zone District for district grant-funded projects.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Keel, I second.
Councilman Keel seconds, and with that, we can go to a vote. And do we, is this roll call or a voice vote, Demi? Voice vote? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, council comments, yes. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And so if, is there a council member that would like to make a comment before we vote? Councilmember Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Again, Jack, thank you for the work, and I guess we'll thank David for his parting shot for us going out the door. To what Mayor Pro Tem said earlier in his comments about grant-funded projects being a very good way for us to afford to do the work that we need to do around the city as far as infrastructure. You know, hearing testimony from citizens tonight around their interest and their need for this particular project near their homes and neighborhoods and things like that, I think at least encourages me to know that we're on the right track as far as what needs to be done. And I couple that with us, you know, using our match out of those swim funds that's the only thing we can use them for, right? So I'm thankful that, you know, this council and staff have done the work to actually have that level of budget in that fund so that we can do the work that needs to be done for the city. So I'm very much going to be in favor of this resolution.
Thank you for
Thank you,
comments. Any other comments?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Keel. And you may be tired for some of you in the public or even in the council to hear some of us continue to mention about how we are taxed and some public comment here tonight about the tax statements that have gone out. And if you look closely, you will see the property taxes that go to University Place is a few $100s, depending on the assessment you have for your house, compared to the thousands and thousands that go to the fire district and the school district. We don't have a huge tax in the city of University Place, and everything that we collect goes to public safety. And I say that because when we have done, I think, and not that I think, I actually know, because I do, and most of us do get around with other officials, elected officials in other cities. We're a part of a regional collaboration of how to get grants, and we compete against other cities in the Puget Sound to receive grants for their prospective cities. We just happen to be very good. And when I say we, our staff are masters at doing this. And this public, our city, our community should be very, very grateful that we have some of the best there is in the show when it comes to getting grants. Because without those grants, as you see tonight, things don't get fixed. If you are been enjoying our city, our sidewalks, our streets, our parks, our events, all kinds of different things that happen, it's because we get not just $600,000 worth of grants. We're getting millions and millions of grants through the years. Yes, it is taxation, but it is taxation that comes from the state or the feds that get distributed for whoever competes against them. And they will be spent as part of your taxes that get collected and your property taxes for the county and for the state, federal taxes that you pay in. But they will get distributed out to the various governments in different tiers, and including the cities. So I say this because if we didn't go after those grants, we would not be seeing your tax dollars come back to our city. And we do that in a very excellent way. And I think that we compensate, this staff and this council compensates a lot for not getting the appropriate taxation that we should receive in order to fund our police. And so I think that you really need to be aware of this, and we need to do a better job communicating that to us, and I think this gives us that opportunity. That being said, I'd like to give the opportunity to Mr. Eklund. I think he might have some information on one of the comments that was commented on.
On the, I spoke with the resident. I'm going to touch base with him, and I got his information, and I'm going to share all the design detail with him.
Okay, you will?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you came up here for a reason, but okay. No,
No.
Mayor, I'm done.
Thank you.
Just want the front row seat.
Great. Any other comments from council members? If not, then we'll go to a voice vote. And all those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to our next item, which is our discussion, or rather action, on House Bill 1590, related funding, housing, and related services and sales tax. Mr. Brusky, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I believe Matt Kaiser, City Attorney, will be doing the primary.
Yeah. So I'm sorry,
That's
you're
okay.
you're leading us off?
I'll kick you off on this one.
All right, well, please do.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Matt Kaiser, I am your city attorney. Tonight before you for action is a proposed ordinance that would levy a sales tax as authorized under RCW 8214-530. This tax, if council chose to impose it, would be an additional 0.1% at point of sale sales tax on all goods sold within the city. This tax, as I noted, is one that's authorized by statute. Part of the reason why you're discussing it now is Pierce County has a similar tax measure, except for their action set on March 7th. The tax, if a local municipality chooses to pass it, serves as a credit against the county tax. At present, the city of Tacoma is the only municipality that we are aware of within Pierce County that has such a tax. This tax has restricted uses. Part of the council discussion that has focused on this tax over the course of the last couple of council meetings has focused a little bit on those uses, and I want to spend some time talking with council about those uses. Under the statute, those taxes must be used for two general buckets, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. The first bucket is probably best thought of as a capital bucket. Under the statute, a minimum of 60% of the monies collected under this tax must be used for one of three purposes. First, constructing or acquiring affordable housing, which may include emergency, transitional, supportive housing, etc. Two, constructing or acquiring behavioral health facilities or acquiring land for those facilities. And three, funding the operations and maintenance costs of new units of affordable housing facilities or newly constructed evaluation and treatment centers. That's the first bucket, the 60% bucket, if you will. The second bucket is not a 40% bucket, it's a remainder bucket under the statute. And the statute is also explicit on those uses, that they must be used for the operation, delivery, and evaluation of behavioral health treatment programs and services for housing-related services. Part of the discussion that council had previously was, let's talk about the uses of those buckets. What can we use that for? How can we spend it? Those sort of things. And council discussion had focused on two general areas, if you will. The first was evaluating partnerships and the like with other local entities, and the second was, could we potentially use some of these funds to offset the cost of a community behavioral health type officer or other officers honed within the police department for behavioral health services. After doing some additional research and checking, you can, but there's always a catch. And let me share with you a little bit of those catches. The first catch, as I shared with you, well, let me start first with the uses of those funds. Obviously, within current staffing resources, we don't have the ability to, as I set forth, construct, fund, et cetera, those purposes. So that would require that the city enter into some sort of interlocal relationship or intergovernmental agreement with another local government. You know, examples of such governments may include Pierce County, the Tacoma Housing Authority, and other municipalities within the area. We would be ultimately responsible for the control of those funds to make sure that they met that minimum 60% threshold. The second, in terms of that officer or offsetting the cost of that officer that we had talked about before, after taking a look at the statute, I believe you can at least use those funds, but in part. And two requirements necessarily have to be triggered. The first is that we have to, because it's the remainder portion under the statute, you have to commit in some way, shape, or form to that minimum 60% that I just talked about for capital. The second is that it's not going to get you a full officer. So just using some back of the envelope numbers, et cetera, if you're looking at using a portion of that officer's time, you can fund that portion of the officer's time, but not a full officer. So if we're using back of the envelope numbers for about $100,000 for salary and benefits for an officer, and that officer does 30% in behavioral health stuff, you can spend $30,000 for the officer. You're not going to be able to fund the full officer, if that makes sense. With respect to the tax, a couple additional questions popped up in the intervening period, which is if council passes this tax tonight, when would it ultimately take effect? The best information that we have at this point from the Department of Revenue is that it would potentially be in effect as of April 1st, which is their next quarterly cycle. If they can't meet that quarterly cycle, it would then fall into the next quarterly cycle, which would then be July 1st. That's an awful lot of mouthful, so at this point, I'll stop. I'll yield to any questions that council may have.
Okay. So just factual questions at this point before we go to public comment. And council, any questions at this particular junction before we get to public comment? Councilmember Wood.
Okay, this is probably going to be the first of many questions, but I'll just keep it short for the moment. You mentioned if we drew these, we took these funds in, we'd probably have to do an interlocal with another government agency. Mm-hmm. Are we allowed to do some kind of agreement with, say, a 501c3 to manage those funds, or to use those funds as opposed to the city staff actually managing those funds directly?
I don't necessarily think that you could, at least in the scenario that you're describing. The intent, as you read the statute, is these funds are to be deployed.
Okay.
So, and part of the challenge then is in deploying those funds, we would ultimately still have control, or need to exercise or control and oversight.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions rather from council? Councilmember McCluskey.
On the 60%, you were saying, when I was asking you some questions prior, that's for only capital improvement projects, correct?
Yes.
Right.
There is a portion for operation, but only of new facilities. But think of it generally as capital and new construction.
Okay. Any of these funds could be used for renovations of existing facilities, or has to be
Not the way I read the statute.
No.
It's new construction.
new construction? Okay. And then the whatever's left over, the behavioral health piece to that, it indicated here that it needs to be in tangent with an existing facility within our city.
Are you asking for construction of new facilities?
Well, okay, we have, so you have at-risk youth, and you want to apply some of these behavioral health towards that. We have to have it within our city boundaries, or could we go to another entity that could use these funds?
With respect to the remainder,
Yeah, the
portion?
remainder, whatever's the remainder.
If you could justify that use under that behavioral health ambit, You could get there. I'm having a hard time with the example that you're giving, though, qualifying it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying.
The what?
I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying I'm having a hard time qualifying it.
Right. Yeah. Well, that tells me a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Wood?
Another question. I think we talked about this this week. When would the funds for the 60% or greater for the capital improvement, when would they have to be expended by? Or is it, can we accumulate year to year before we can get something, or is it just?
Your window on this, and there's not a lot of guidance on the statute, but I think it's probably best to say your window on this is it has to follow a budget cycle, which in our case, a biennial budget cycle began this year. It ends December 31st of next year, of '24. So because you don't know your sales tax revenues at the time you establish your budget, I think it's fair to say that you can do sort of your best budgeting, but by the end of the budget cycle, it needs to be reconciled for that minimum 60% portion for capital.
Okay. Actually, I have one more follow-on.
Sure,
And
certainly.
this is either for Matt or Steve. What kind of staffing would the city require to manage these funds? Because we're talking about tops $400,000 annually. What kind of staffing would you have to put in place, or would you, to manage these funds if we were to bring them in?
Councilmember, that's a very difficult question to answer, but certainly more than staff that we currently have, and with our limited capacity that we have right now, we don't have with our current staffing the capacity to take on such a program. That would have to be looked at if we were to take that on in-house, so and then assessed, but we haven't done those calculations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions at this point, so.
And then before you let me off the hook, I don't know, Kevin, did you have any?
Nothing to add.
Okay.
Nothing to add. All right. Very good. Well, I believe we have some members of the audience tonight that would like to make comment. This would be the appropriate time for us to take public comment on this issue as relates to House Bill 1590, housing and related services and a sales tax to support them. Is there anyone that would like to come forward here in the room? Thank you. We'll make a chair and a mic available. And while you're getting seated, also, if you're online, you'll see the instructions on your screen and how to make comment as well, either via the computer or from a telephone. And with that, you have 3 minutes if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Wayne Manny, 5810 80th Avenue, Court West. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and esteemed council members. A couple questions that come to mind. Number one is, and the city's attorney didn't really broach this, and maybe that he doesn't know the number, but what kind of money are we anticipating raising? Do we have an anticipated dollar amount?
We can't go back.
Council,
Okay.
excuse me, Mr. Kaiser, would you like to address that for us?
Yeah,
please?
the number I believe, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but our estimates on this is approximately $400,000 annually.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, the reason that we want to do this is we want to beat the county to do it because the county is going to use the money for the same thing. Is that correct? And is the need in the county bigger than it is in the city of UP? I would
Point of
think
order.
so. And we're talking about collaboration with other entities on the tax.
So,
Is that correct?
well, so Mayor Pro Tem, you had mentioned a point of order, I suspect. Would you like to explain?
Yes, the point of order is that is out of protocol to have a study session with a citizen. That the citizen should have the opportunity to make public comment on this, not to do a study session Q&A with staff or with council.
Thank you. And so, as the Mayor Pro Tem points out, actually, yes, that's correct in terms of what our council rules are, is we don't enter into a direct back and forth with our public comment folks.
Yeah, I'm not looking for answers from you. I'm just bringing up questions I think that the community is going to ask and would probably need to get some information shared with them if this thing is approved by you. You know, one of the things also is what do we consider success with the homeless crisis in the city of UP? and a question that we need to have answered, I think, a little bit more. If we're going to be taxing the citizens on a sales tax basis, I believe we need to understand what the results are, the number of homeless people we have in Pierce County, or excuse me, in the city of UP, how we're going to affect them, how we're going to handle the behavioral things that we're talking about as far as the 60%. The other thing is, I was curious, is there a sunset clause in this sales tax, or does it run an indefinite length of time? So theoretically, at some point, that we would use it for the general fund or something? Is that what I hear you saying?
If you can address the council, you can't be addressing the staff at this point.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Okay. And I guess the other question that just, again, I think more along the lines of things that the community may want to ask is, what's the timeline for results, and how are we going to measure those results, and whether we're successful in helping the community? With that, I believe that I've been chastised enough by Mayor Pro Tem. But in closing, I think that we really need to take a look at this. If we're going to address it and we're going to do something in our community, we better darn well have some ideas on what we're going to do with it and how we're going to make sure we're going to have some successes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Any other public comment at this time? Anyone else would like to make comment? Okay. I'm not seeing any. Amy, do we have anybody online that would like to make comment? Okay, very good. That brings us up to council consideration. And
I'd like to make a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to pass an ordinance authorizing the maximum capacity of the tax authorized under the provisions of RCW 82.14.530, adopting a new chapter 4.100 of the University Place Municipal Code, amending section 4.40.330 UPMC and adopting implementing provisions relating to housing and related services.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second?
Great, thank you. For purposes of conversation and debate, Councilman Keel, I will second.
Okay, we have an appropriate motion and second on the floor, and it's open for consideration. So, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start off this whole debate, and thank you, Councilmember Keel. For the public, when we do these motions, it's not because we may be voting yes or no, which just is a procedural thing that we do that we must in order to get the conversation going and the debate before a vote. So with that, there's been public comment in regards to a lot of the things that we have done, we have said in study session. I think, Mr. Sugg, how many study sessions do we have in this?
I believe this is the second study session.
No, this is the consideration. How many study sessions prior to this today?
Prior to this one?
Right.
It's
One?
It's just
Okay,
one.
so we had a study session. For those that are listening and for those that really want to listen to our discussion, it would be wise to go ahead and go back and look at that because it covered a lot of questions that you may have that also were presented tonight, and that includes what are we going, who are we going to provide these monies to? If we, it's 400,000 plus annually. There was discussion about that we are not prepped, as you heard during some of the clarification questions with the city attorney, that we're not prepped to really do this. We don't have the staffing to do this. Along with that, it must be spent in a very timely fashion. And I've said this in our study session, and that is, 400,000. Don't get me wrong, is a lot. It's a lot of money, but in the realm of housing for mental illness or homelessness or just making housing affordable, it's a drop in the bucket. It's not even a drop. It's just a tear. I mean, a small tear in the bucket of cost for the communities in Puget Sound. This is not a University Place issue. It's a regional issue. And because it is, and it's very evident, don't take my word, look at the governor's last statement about providing several $billion on housing for the homeless and other things. There are regional funding from the county and federal monies that are being provided into the millions and billions. I don't see, and I'm saying this because for us to, for us to actually vote yes on this would be meaningless because that money is not going to take care of any capital expense. We've heard tonight about how much cost has gone up on everything, and we all have experienced this just at home and here in the city. That is, when you're talking about this type of housing and capital projects, you're lucky if you can pay for the permits for $400,000. And any consultant and survey and whatever we must do, we'll spend that money before we even get to the front door. So I don't see how that's going to really resolve anything regarding and relating to this type of housing. I think it's best to let the county. They're going to do it. Either we do it or they do it. That's been kind of what has been mentioned. I don't really want. I'm not in favor of it. I will not support it because I think that the county can definitely utilize it. We talked about, okay, we're not going to use at least 60% of that. So then let's just. I know that we might have a little more control with the county if we accept this or tax our citizens ourselves and we have an interlocal agreement. But at the end of the day, it's really to provide this type of housing anywhere near us. It doesn't have to be in UP. Anywhere near us to help folks that are being that are transit. At this level of housing, we're talking about people of transit levels, and so I think that the county is well suited, not only as a single player, but also as a regional player because they are more suited to get more money. And there is a big bucket of money that's being distributed from the feds and the state to handle this. And they're looking at the counties, not individually with different cities. So I'm not in favor of that for those reasons. I don't think that the remainder assisting in paying for $30,000 towards the cost of a community engagement officer, that's not resolving the problem. All that is okay. We have to really figure out where we're going to take from one part of the city to pay for the remainder of that community engagement officer, and I'm not ready to have that discussion tonight while we're discussing this, but we should if we did this. So I'm not in favor. There's a lot of not good things for better verbiage here, but I think that, and I'm certainly, if I'm going to be passing or voting for a tax on our community, certainly there are other priorities that other parties cannot take care of for us that we need to consider before a taxation that on an issue like housing, this type of housing, that others are already taken care of and are much more equipped and funded to do so. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Before we go on to other comments, I wanted to get the public comment record complete. So just to confirm, Council, I think at your seats you found an email from Sarah Koenig, who had commented on this issue this afternoon. I just wanted to acknowledge that came in and that the council's had a chance to see that. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to Councilmember McCluskey for her comments.
Right, thank you. I'm not going to repeat some of Mayor Pro Tem's comments. What the City Council was trying to do is explore this option rather than losing the $400,000 to Pierce County and be part of a competitive process to get some of the funding back into University Place as the need arises. There are certain things coming down from the federal, state, and county levels that will eventually force the citizens of University Place to put money into some of these programs for affordability, of housing, behavioral health. We don't have a lot of behavioral health facilities within our borders, so they're going to look to us to, time to eventually pay our percentage of that cost, and there's discussions going forward in regards to that. This sales tax that's going forward on the housing and related issues will come to fruition. The county has at least 4 people in favor of that sitting on the county council, and they only need 1 more. So it's pretty much set to go tomorrow night. So if you are not in favor of it, I would strongly encourage you to go to the county council meeting tomorrow and voice your opinion, because if they approve it, which more likely it seems like they would, because we were trying to beat them to the punch so University Place could have more control over the funding. If that doesn't happen, then they more than likely will vote, and we will be taxed anyway on it. So it's not about preventing the taxation at this point, even though, I can't say it's inevitable, but it's strongly, highly likely that they will pass this tax on to all the citizens in Pierce County. And Mr. Manning, you are correct. That's why we were having a lot of brainstorming and questions as to what could we possibly do with this money in University Place. And you're right, it would be an effort in futility if we pass a tax that we didn't know what we were going to do with it, right? So I concur with your logic on that. And this is a dedicated funding source, so it would not go into our general fund. And if you heard the study session and some of the comments from our city attorney tonight, and other qualifying questions I had outside of those 2 meetings with our staff, there's a lot of strings attached to this that makes it an undue hardship, unfortunately, for our city to be able to use it for the benefits of its own citizens at this point. And, $400,000 is only $500,000 a year. That could do some benefit, but to get a hold of these funds, we'll have to be in a competitive process with the entire county if we ever to go after these funds. I'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. I'm going to make a couple of comments before moving on to Councilmember Keel and then Councilmember Fleming. With regards to this issue, Councilmember McCluskey, I think, touched on it. I'm going to, touch on it a little bit as well, though. The reality is Pierce County is on the edge of passing this tax. And so it becomes a question, since our citizens are going to pay this, what, if anything, can we do to see that our citizens derive some services out of these funds as directly as possible? That's a bit of a challenge, as you heard in the summary that City Attorney Kaiser had gone over. There are, as Councilmember McCluskey put it, a lot of strings on this, a lot of limitations. We can't do too much with it, but 60% or more towards capital new construction. There's a need for that. I'm not sure that need is in UP, and I certainly, in my own view of local government, do not believe we want to create more, take more money out of that fund to pay for staffing to make that happen. It just doesn't seem to be where I'm at for the capital side of this. Nonetheless, is there a way we can use some of those funds, though, to serve our citizens in a more pressing need if possible? And we have had some conversations about that. City Attorney Kaiser touched on that a little bit. The fact is, as some of you have been following, maybe all of you have been following the police levy discussion and what's going on there. The council and the community generally seems to have an interest in community outreach officers. These are limited commission officers that would supplement what our regular officers do. They're not a full police officer. They would have a limited commission, have certain things they could do, but not all things a police officer would do. Much of what I believe they would end up doing is helping people that were in some sort of crisis in their life. And if that is over homelessness or some other stress factor in their life. And really, a lot of what police officers themselves work with has to do with someone who's having some mental behavioral or behavioral problems going on, behavioral health problems happening. And so some of these lower level behavioral health issues may well be addressed by a community outreach officer. Well, if that's the case, we potentially could take no more than 30%, no more than 40% of the revenue from this source and use that to pay for a portion of that community service officer's time and the resources they need and the training they need and whatever else it may be. And that seems to fit within the rules here. That would be a way for us to help address an issue that's very much in our face, that we hear a lot about from our community. And is there a way we can do that? The answer appears to be yes, or at least maybe. The fact is we have about 24 hours before the county takes action on this, and our opportunity will have begun. It's either we do this now or we don't do it at all. And so that's sort of what we're weighing between. I think that the county actions are coming up roughly in 24 hours or so. Is that
March 7th.
I'm sorry.
March 7th.
March. Oh, I'm sorry. We have until March 7th. Yeah. Oh, lots of time. Excuse me. But regardless, I think the urgency is there, so this really is the last effective meeting for us to be able to deal with that. So those are the things we're weighing through. That's one potential that I think has benefit to our community that would bring some of the dollars collected here back here. To do that, we would need to, essentially, we would need to pass this tax now. Contract for someone to put the 60% to its lawful purpose, likely outside of our boundaries, but hopefully serving some of our community. And maybe that's the county, maybe it's someone else. And then use these funds to help us otherwise. That particular idea is intriguing. Outside of that, the county can have the money, from my perspective. So, Councilmember Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I'll repeat a little bit of what everyone has said so far, but just from my perspective, it really boils down to two things very clearly for me. One is I do believe that the county is going to, pass the tax and take the money. I mean, I've lived in this community for 35 years. I've owned my home. I finally can say I own my home, in this city for that many years. I pay the tax just like everyone in this room that owns a home in this city. So I am keenly interested in making sure that reason why I'm at this dais is so that I can speak for and protect myself as a homeowner and all of my fellow citizens as homeowners and do the best thing that we can see for the city. And I think in this case, we needed to consider this tax because of what I know the county is going to do. They're going to pass this tax, and they're going to take our money and use it for whatever they want to do. And I didn't want that to happen. And so I wanted to consider, and that's the word, consider looking at this tax. Folks that know me well and know that I'm very much a fiscal conservative. Very few taxes. In fact, at this council, I voted for one councilmatic tax. All the others, I voted no on. Check the record. And so I am considering this because of a protection for all of us from what I know that the county was going to do. Now, having heard from staff, I don't get warm and fuzzy that we're going to be able to do the things that I was hoping that we could do, like the mayor mentioned about paying for the resource officer, because I know that's a need. And if we have resource officers that can take the load off of our understaffed police, and I'll tell everybody, I believe our police are understaffed. And they have too many calls with the amount of officers that we have, and some of those calls are those nuisance calls. And if we could take those funds and hire resource officers so that now our understaffed police can actually really focus on the real crime and not deal with, mental health kinds of issues, I think that would have been a good thing. I don't think that is going to be the case now, given all the strings that are attached to what we have. So at this point in time, I'm not at all in favor of moving forward for the city to impose this tax. But I will tell you, everyone in earshot of me, we, and I say we because I live in this city too, we still will pay that tax because the county, I believe, is going to pass it. So all of you that came here to tell us what not to do and all your great speeches, take it to the county because they are going to consider it on March 7th, and I think that they're going to pass it. So with that, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Fleming, then Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I will just for the fun of it. First and foremost, I want to just say thanks to the citizens that turned out tonight to talk about this. I was going to say for or against, but to really talk about this. Certainly to our city attorney, I think you brought a lot of clarity that we didn't have during the study session of what we can or can't do with this. And then to the comments of the council, and I really appreciate the comments that the Mayor Pro Tem made. I think you were quite poignant in what you were trying to articulate there. You know, I want to say for the record, I support endeavors that truly help affordable housing and mental health. If it was truly going to do that, I probably would say let's do it. But for all the reasons that people have talked about tonight, this initiative just doesn't get there, number one. Number two, if you do the math, and I think most people have already done that, it's not going to address the affordable housing issues we have in our city, and it's certainly not going to even touch the mental health. You know, the next piece of this is, and why I don't want to support this initiative, is I really resent the state telling cities when they have to pass taxes or that they have to pass taxes with a boatload of strings attached to it saying what you can or can't do. I resent the state getting in our business, and I can say that pretty directly. You know, when we talk about doing the math, I think Mr. Manny made several good points. When you look at the cost of affordable housing, you know, $240,000 isn't going to buy us anything as far as affordable housing goes, unless there's something about the market I don't know about, and certainly in mental health. When you look at the resources, I appreciated our city manager telling us, you know, we can pass this, but we don't have the resources to do anything with it. So it makes no sense to tax folks and then, to Councilmember McCluskey's point, then try to figure out what we're going to do after it's done. I also have an issue when we pass taxes and we don't put sunset clauses on those taxes because, again, to Mr. Manny's point, taxes go on forever and ever. We all tend to forget why we passed the tax in the first place, and years later that tax is still there, but we're not sure what we're doing with it. And it may or may not roll to the general fund. I know there's strings attached to it, but you know, people come and go, electeds come and go, city staff come and go, and then over time, you really don't know why you're collecting the tax other than you're doing it. When we talk about the county's going to pass this tax, yeah, they're the big bugaboo in the room that if we don't pass it, they will. High probability that they'll do that, but we should never allow ourselves to make decisions on the threats of another governmental entity telling us what we should or shouldn't do. I do concur with the point that was made just a moment ago that if you feel strong about taxation, and I think everyone here spoke tonight about that, I strongly, not mildly, but strongly encourage us to go down to the county council and let them know your thoughts. I think they deserve to hear as much about your feelings about taxation as you've shared with the council here tonight on there. So I don't run from the fear of the county council doing something. I just say let's take them on and fight them if we need to. But short of that, for all the reasons that have been expounded on, it's a bad initiative, and I'm just not on board with that. So thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I will not reiterate all the points here tonight, so in the interest of brevity, just a couple of things I'd like to add is I think this would end up costing the city money because there's so many restrictions on this funding that we'd have to probably tap into general fund for staffing support or for spending that $240,000 doesn't even buy you an empty lot in the city anymore. you'd have to add another few $100,000 just to buy something for it. And then that takes away from all of our priorities identified in this community that we've already talked about. So for that reason, and all the others mentioned, I am not in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other comments before we go to a vote? Seeing none, Amy, would you do a roll call for us, please?
Mr. Mayor? Councilmember Keel?
Councilman Keel? No.
Councilmember Wood?
Councilmember Wood, nay.
Councilmember McCluskey?
No.
Councilmember Fleming?
Councilmember Fleming, nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa?
Nay.
Mayor Worthington?
Mayor Worthington, nay.
Vote result 6-0. Motion fails.
Motion
Failed.
fails. All right. That moves us on to our next item, which is consideration of the public safety levy. And Police Chief Greg Primo will get us started on this one.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. Before I hand things over to the City Attorney, I'm just going to make a brief statement. On behalf of the members of the University Place Police Department, I want to say thank you to the Council. Thank you for continuing the discussion around funding for additional officers in your police department. I believe that our current situation is of critical importance to the future of public safety in University Place. Providing adequate public safety services is a fundamental function of local government. The limitations on funding have forced the city to keep this in the forefront of the minds of our citizens. While additional officers will not make University Place crime-free, it will improve the level of service, increase proactive community-oriented policing, and enhance police visibility throughout our city. I want to thank you again for keeping public safety a priority in University Place, and also thank the citizens for their continued support. Now I will turn it over to the City Attorney for all the fun stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your good words.
And when the chief says the fun stuff, he's really talking the boring stuff. Let me talk you and walk you through the nuts and bolts of the resolution that's before you tonight. The resolution that is before you tonight is a measure to place for a special election this upcoming April, a ballot proposition. This generally tracks with some change, with a couple changes. A very similar ballot measure that appeared on the November 2022 general election. Let me walk you through some of the details. First, the measure that is before you tonight, it tracks following general council discussion based on prior study sessions, the so-called B+ option that has been previously discussed that would envision 8 additional patrol and traffic officers together with specialists addressing homelessness, park safety, and crime prevention. We had talked about various other options. If council wants to discuss those other options, I can walk you through those permutations and the amendments that would be necessary to this measure that's before you tonight. There is a deadline for council, has with all things, but this deadline is a bit on the fuse. If council does wish to place this on the April special election ballot, we have to act by the close of business on Friday, about 4 o'clock or so on Friday. There's a couple additional things that would have to be done, but tonight's the last council meeting to make that election, or last regular council meeting to make that election. A couple of housekeeping things based on follow-on discussions from prior council meetings. At the last council meeting, there was some general discussion related to the ballot question. Could we do some things to tune up the ballot question to make it more descriptive, more clarifying, and the like? The ballot question that you do have in front of you is in response to some of those council concerns, as well as some of the outreach that we had done in advance of this to clarify and make more specific that this is for dedicated funding to descriptively identify what it is that residents are getting within the scope of the question, and to simplify some of the numbers as best as we possibly can. We had received, I believe, council. There is also a provision in there because of the short fuse, pro and con statements of council subcommittee of the mayor, mayor pro tem, and finance committee chair. This tracks council's prior past practice that we have done with prior resolutions and prior ballot measures in terms of soliciting pro and con votes. There is a call on both our website as well as our social medias for that, so we can also meet that Friday deadline if council wishes to go forward on that. That concludes my otherwise prepared remarks. I'm happy to stand for any questions together with any questions that may be directed towards the chief.
Council, any questions before we go to public comment? Okay. With that, we may come back and have some questions later, but let's move on to public comments and invite people to, if you'd like to speak on this item, this is your opportunity. I have several names that have signed up. We'll take those names first. Also, if you're online, as we've done previously tonight, we'll put up the instructions on how to make comment via the internet or by phone. In all cases, you'll have 3 minutes available to you. And let's see. Betsy Tainer, I think, is the first one that I see that has signed up on this sheet. And would you like to make comment at this time?
Hello, Betsy Tainer. I live at 3333 Locust Avenue West. It's been a while since most of you have seen me. And since that time, I am now
Ms.
collecting...
Tainer, I'm sorry, excuse me. We're just having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. Maybe you could move the mic closer to your mouth. Yeah.
How much closer
just
I can get.
That should help some. Thank you.
Okay, so since the last time you saw me, I am now collecting Social Security. So when you look at the taxes of my very modest home, that actually has an assessed value of less than what you're stating to be the city average assessed value for a home. When I bought it in 2006, the difference between the property taxes I was paying at that time and this coming year, 2023, is a 99% increase. It's doubled. So it doesn't really make that much difference to me how much of that money is going to the fire or the schools or the libraries or flood control zones or the city or anything else. What concerns me is how much money I'm going to have left over after I pay my property taxes. And it turns out that what I will have left over is less than $8,000 a month. And with that, I get to put heat in my house. I get to turn the lights on. I get to have water. I get to have sewer. I get to have garbage. Hopefully groceries, right? It gets hard. There's other ways of going about taking care of this issue. Traffic cams would be great. And it wouldn't be, from what I understand, an investment on the part of the city. There's companies who will put those in and maintain them and take a portion of the revenues, and that would help an awful lot. The ask I think that you're looking for also is too much, and we're also looking at the state changing the amount that it can increase annually from 1% to 3%. And when you look at nearly doubling it virtually overnight, and then turning a 1% potential increase annually into 3% of a lot more, it's going to get out of hand. And it's not fair to people who are holding on. If you're going to be talking about affordable housing, you can talk about it on this topic.
Thank you. Who else would like to talk about this topic, would make a comment on this topic?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Dennis Flan, 2623 Lemons Beach Road. Affordable housing is on everyone's mind, but the bureaucracy and tax increases, it seems further out of reach every day. Legislative majority limited our advisory vote at the ballot box, apparently not wanting the electorate feedback. A sales tax increase is coming. House Bill 1670 passed out of committee with a due pass to the Senate. It will allow local property tax annual increases from 1% to 3% when approved. The city should take into consideration this funding that they will surely take advantage of when it seeks further tax revenue in the police services levy lid lift. Mildred Street, University Place, has 274 apartments being constructed. Now FERCREST seems to approve 389 apartment units across the street. Homeowners should not be expected to pick up the tab for this kind of development and its impact on our community. With this kind of development being implemented across our state, new tax levies against them to support city services and parks and schools and fire and police must be explored. There is a family behind every door of an apartment complex or a single-family dwelling. We all have equal value that has nothing to do with property assessments. Equity for all includes taxation and services that each of these doors represent. Property taxes to excess must stop. We're still number one, let's do something else. And resource or community resource officers could be a city liability since they are hired by the city. They will be exposed to unstable persons that police are more prepared to deal with in a crisis situation. Just say no to this liability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Appreciate your comments as well. Who else would like to make comment this evening? Please come forward. Introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Jennifer Healy, and I live at 7505 52nd Street Court West. I've lived in University Place since 2010. It's been a great place to raise a family. I've loved living here, but I'm concerned about the direction that our city, our county, our state is going in with regard to crime. I'm nervous to run errands anymore. I'm nervous to go to the ATM off of Bridgeport at Wells Fargo. I'm nervous to go to Fred Meyer, to get groceries because I'm worried I might get carjacked. However, I'm also frustrated about us revisiting this tax for police. I support the police. I love the police. I think we need more of them, but I also think there has to be another way to fund them because, like other residents have said, people are having trouble. I know friends that can't buy eggs anymore because eggs are so expensive. I know friends that are having trouble, filling up their gas tanks to be able to work. The cost of living has just gone up so much. I just don't think that it's fair, especially to people that are on a fixed income, to then have the burden of an additional tax to pay for safety. The government's job is to keep us safe and protect our liberty, and I feel like that should be the number one priority, period. So I've had friends that have asked, and I'm pretty naive, like I haven't been involved in local politics at all, and that's my own fault, but is it possible to maybe vote on all of the levies at the same time so people can pick and choose? Like maybe we don't choose this or pass the school levy because we need to fund the police and we need to fund our firefighters. I'm just curious about that. And then I also had a friend ask about $1 million that's supposed to go to like general repairs and fixing fences and things like that, and they're asking, couldn't that money go to funding our police? So those are things I'm just curious about, and I'd love to get answers, at some point. And I think that's everything. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you, Ms. Haley. Appreciate you coming in and chatting with us as well and sharing your thoughts. Anyone else like to make comment here before us in the chamber? Anyone else? While we're just pause there for a second, see if there's anyone online. No one online yet. So last call for public comment. Not seeing any. We'll move on to council consideration. Is there a motion to start the discussion? I'm sorry. Well, we did reach your time, and we've sort of passed the moment, but thank you, though.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing a levy lift to be placed on the April 2023 special election ballot for support of law enforcement services.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. Is there a second?
This is Councilmember Keel, and for the sake of discussion, I will second.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Any discussion with council? So, not seeing, okay. Then Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay. I'll warm up the dais here with this. We have been kicking this can down the road for quite a few years. This is the third time. Third time wasn't really a charm. That we were trying to get a solution for our public safety gap. In that time, I have seen our police statistics for calls in our city exponentially increase. Petty crime, property theft, dramatically increasing. Even on my little street, the last couple years was not very pretty. We don't have enough officers to even cover the current needs that we have. We have to call in for our surrounding cities. One of the duties as a city and council member is to do the fiduciary duty of public safety and protect our public infrastructure. Our infrastructure in our city is in need as well. We are a city that has been almost running on empty for quite a few years. We have squeezed the lemon as much as we can, and so we don't take it lightly to go out to the citizens and ask for a levy lid increase. This particular increase is going to not even meet the needs that we currently have, but it is going to substantially help us in the long run. We definitely need the community outreach officers. They are highly trained. Well, they're not really, they're civilian positions. They're highly trained. They're not going to go out there untrained. And if they run into any issues, they'll have a backup just like any other police officer would have. The choice ultimately is the citizens of University Place to look at option B, which is different than the ones that we came out with the last time, in hoping that maybe you'll see the need for traffic control, petty crime, property, car invasion, car prowls, and hopefully make our city safer, because if we don't fix this issue, it's just going to increase throughout the years. And I understand the state has hamstringed our police to do some of their jobs that we would like them to do, the pursuit. But that is something that, we'll have to work on, and hopefully that will get fixed. But in the meantime, the citizens in our community needs to feel safe in going to the grocery store, going to the ATMs, going down, be able to walk down their street and feel safe in their community. I've had more and more of my friends decide that probably the best thing to do is to buy a gun. That's not always the right solution, because they don't feel safe. And Ms. Haley, you're correct when it comes down to looking at all the levies that the citizens have the option to pass. The schools and the fire, they typically have their levies passed. The city typically does not. And so because of all that, it doesn't just impact the city a little bit. It impacts the city a lot throughout the years, because our funds and our money lose value over time with the rate of inflation. And right now we're losing a lot. If we don't pass this, more and more of the general fund will be taken out to support even less basic needs that we are able to fund currently today. So we are at a crossroads with this, and I would like another opportunity for our citizens to relook at this and to see if they would like a property levy tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming.
You know, Mr. Mayor, that's a hard act to follow, because I honestly can't say it any better than what Councilmember McCluskey just said in terms of summarizing. You know, I'm not one who likes, and I shared this with the council, so I'm not speaking out of school when I said I didn't like, you know, going back in April and doing this again. But, you know, for all the reasons that were just stated, I think it's one that we need to look at. You know, I get it, you know, back to what Betsy and both Jennifer have said about people on fixed incomes and really making the hard decisions now. Do you buy eggs or do you pay your light bill or have water in your house? You know, the family dollar is shrinking as more needs and demands grow on the community to support it. I've heard everywhere I've gone in our community that public safety is number one. You know, and I know when I first came on this council, I was kind of a bull in a china closet saying, you know, we need to really fund this and get behind it. We've spent hours, and I swear to you, we have spent hours looking for money elsewhere within the city to fund our police department. Years ago, you know, we had a city in which we had almost zero to no crime, but we had a very robust police department at the time, and over the years, that's been whittled away and diminished because of competing demands for resources. And to Councilmember McCluskey's point, we really are at that crossroads that we have to now, as a community, not as a council, but as a community, make the decision, is it important to us or is it not important to us? And yes, will we have to give up something to get something? Unfortunately, this is one of those things that's really tough. But it's in the hands of the community and not in the hands of a council to decide whether we move forward with this. I think when it comes to taxation, none of us like that. I shouldn't say none of us, majority of us don't like that. But when we're going to do it, I think it's the citizens who need to make that decision. Again, as Councilmember McCluskey pointed out, we've kicked this can down as far as we can kick it. And now this really is the point where we decide, are we going to do it or are we not? And if we say collectively as a community, we're not going to do it, then so be it. If we say, yeah, we do need to have it, and people who looked at the, I'm trying to blank on this thing, on the proposed staffing, I can see the arguments that when they said, well, that was pretty robust, you know, can you come up with something a little leaner? So we sent this back to the chief, and they've trimmed it down even more for their police force to what we think they can get by with. It doesn't get us to where we absolutely need to get to, but I think it gets us a little further ahead than where we are currently. So for those reasons, I really would ask the citizens to give it a heartfelt thought. And again, it'll be your decision, not ours, in terms of what we do. And for those reasons, I can get behind this initiative, just to say, put it out there and let the people decide.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief and Matt, for presentation. Definitely difficult conversation. Difficult from the standpoint of how do we fund it. I think it's very simple from the standpoint of, do we need more officers? I think most everyone would agree to that point. We've heard testimony tonight that yes, crime is rising and we need to do something to address it. The difficult part that I see, and again, I don't mean to insult or belittle citizens and all, but because people are busy, they're going to work and they're coming home and they're taking care of their kids and they're going to sporting events and they're living their lives, and they don't necessarily pay attention to all the stuff that we at the dais pay attention to all the time. But I do think that there still is a fair amount of belief that two things, that all of the taxes that we pay in property tax goes to the city. I think a lot of people believe that, and it's simply not true. 8 pennies out of every dollar we spend in the tax, 9 pennies out of every dollar we spend in our property tax comes to the city. Those other 91 cents, much of it goes to the police. Much of it goes to fire, and the other big bunch of it goes to the schools. And then other little pieces goes to the library and other places. So when people stop me at the grocery store and say, what are you doing with all that money that I'm paying? Well, the 9 cents that we get from you out of every dollar, we give to the police. The other 91 cents is going to other people. And I like the one citizen that said tonight, we wish we could, vote things, all these different things and compare the schools and the fire to the city and all that kind of stuff. Well, we do that all the time. Every time there's a school levy and it passes, we had the opportunity to not pass it so that you can make room for other stuff. And again, this is not me arguing against the schools at all, because guess what? I spent 10 years on this school board as a school director, so I know how important schools are, and I was advocating for the school levies when I was there. I'm here now saying that there's a need for police, and we do have to make a decision as a community. Are we going to do it, or are we not going to do it? And I am one council member, I'm in very much support of putting that question out to the citizens again. If the vote that we take tonight passes, it's not passing the tax. We aren't passing the tax. We're passing to put the question out to the citizens, do they want to be taxed? Now, some people don't want us to do that. Put the question out. Well, I don't agree with you. I think that the question should be out to the citizens so that they can make the decision. And with that, I do support what this legislation is going to be.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a fight that won't end. If you think because whatever we do tonight, let's just say we appease for those that we shouldn't be voting on this, and we're going to go home and everybody's happy. Not. This fight will never end. One is the cost will always go up. Crime will always go up. The need will, when it comes to protecting our community, us as individuals, our families, they're always, you think about inflation, we think about inflation about eggs, milk, gas, clothing, water, utilities. Safety is a cost. And if you don't have the proper safety, just like if you don't have the proper clothing, you're going to get cold. You may even die if it gets too cold and you don't have the right clothing. If you don't eat, you may die if you don't have enough food. All those kind of things are consequences. And I can tell you right now, there is a consequence for not having the proper public safety for this community that has been below the mark of true safety. There was a member of the public here testify about her grandson tonight. Thank God it was a different topic, a different answer. Her grandson survived. It would have been a lot different story if he would have died. If you think the cost is high for this additional tax, which you're fighting, I mean, you have to make a decision. You want to, if this is less important than paying for more schools or more fire safety or more going on vacations or going to the movies or going to the restaurants and all that, that's up to you. But at the end of the day, the cost of losing someone that's a bread maker in the family was super size that cost above any. The loss of a member or a grandson or a child, or forget about just the loss, maiming a person and injuring a person to the point that they can't provide them for themselves. The cost of society. You've heard about mental illness. We're talking about housing. That's also a lot of it is being subsidized. You can imagine the subsidization that occurs in this state, in this county, and even in this city for all kinds of things. You have food banks subsidizing folks. It happens all the time. And when you don't have enough public safety, when we don't have enough public safety, things will happen. Crime will happen. Accidents will happen. Injuries will happen. And we need, when that happens, there's a much bigger cost than anything out there that I can ever imagine. And I think that let's not fool ourselves thinking that this conversation is going to end, or this council, people are going to be leaving here for those that are against this taxation, that, you know, when something really happens in their backyard, if they're not going to be before us saying, we need to figure out what we're going to do. Public service is a core service, as far as I'm concerned. It's a fiduciary responsibility that we have to provide, that should be provided. We can't do it as a council. What we can do is put it out for a vote. Now, the timing, yes. The timing, for me, it was because it's fresh. One of the things that we heard is that, well, we weren't really knowing exactly what was going on, or we didn't get enough information. Well, the one thing that I didn't want to see is so much time that was between the last vote and then future vote, was that people will forget, and then you have to completely start all over again. I think that doing it as soon as possible, which this is the case, allows them to still have some inkling that this is what's going on. And so timing is everything, and it's like Councilmember Keel said, in the past we've been bunched with so many on the ballot that we get lost. As a matter of fact, we got so lost last time we were in the back of the ballot. And so, no, I don't want to compete. People get confused. They always talk about, well, I don't know, there's so much stuff on here. Well, we're giving them opportunity to focus on one thing and one thing only, is public safety. What is it? What are we trying to achieve? The cause, so they don't have to crunch the numbers for all of them. Maybe some of you guys, some of the public are super mathematicians that can, figure out all the numbers and separate everything, but that's not the normal voter. The normal voter is going to say, whatever, let's pick and choose. And so I think this is a clean way to allow for our citizens to focus on one thing that we feel is important. And not just we, when I say we, I said the community. That was very evident in polls and studies that we did. That's a number one objective in this community. So it should be the number one thing on the ballot, and the only thing on the ballot. There was conversation about the police officers maybe, or the engagement officers not being a liability. I think that's the word I heard. Imagine the liability of not having these engagement officers or the police officers. Talk about that. Because whenever, and for those that come, and that's even for our council, we have to depend on our specialists, our professionals like the chief and other staff They come before us with facts and figures that if we do this, you can accomplish this. Or the risk is a risk management, and this won't happen or will happen. Community engagement officers lowers the risk for crime to occur. It lowers the risk of the community, the full-time police officers to be able to go and have those much more complicated crime scenes. It really does provide a service that is a bang for the buck. And it's easy to come before here, and it's easy for this council sometimes. We have debated with staff many times about why, and then they educate us. And believe me, we're not simple people to educate. We really kick the tires when we say, tell us why, just like you're trying to kick the tires. You don't have the opportunity to really kick the tires the way we do. You really don't, unless you're like always here and always working with the professionals. But those two community engagement officers is a big bang for the buck. And that's what we're trying to achieve. As someone said in this council, there isn't enough money. This ballot is not going to provide us with everything. And to come, and I hope it passes, but even when it passes, we provide all this extra public safety, we will still have crime. For anyone to come back and say, well, we passed, we're giving you more taxes, I shouldn't have somebody break into my car. It's going to happen, period. Even if we put cameras in every intersection, it will happen. People will run the stoplight or will run and speed. A perfect society does not exist. What we do is risk management to really lower that risk so you can feel a little bit safer at Fred Meyer's parking lot. You can feel a little bit safer that someone's going to respond at a burglary, that you're going to be able to be protected sooner than later and potentially save lives or injury. I'm almost done, Mayor, but since this is such a hot topic, this is my time to really engage with the community and our thoughts. Property values, you talk about taxation. Forget about who you're paying taxes to. The taxes are going to be there, one way or another. Just like when you go to the store or you go and fix your car or whatever, it's going to be there. The increase in cost is going to be there. What's really interesting about when it comes to public safety and potentially the fire district can provide this, and that is protecting your property values. The school as well, potentially, but when you talk about property values being high, yes, you have better streets, you have clean streets, you have nice parks, but the three major things, public safety, the first responders, and education. Public safety, if crime continues to increase, and it will, if crime is unchecked, and it will if we don't have the proper public safety numbers in here, your property values will go down. Yes, because of that, you might pay less taxes. I guess if you want to lower your taxes, you can go that way. Certainly it's going to be the wrong way, because forget about your house being devalued and you're paying less taxes, but your quality of life and potential crime to you will increase. My neighbor, 93 years old, across the street, just about 3 days ago, I walk every day, and I'm not exaggerating a bit. For those that know me, I do walk every day. She comes out of the house. I'm walking. I'm right before I pass her house. I kind of see her at the corner of my eye, and she's out, not running because she's 93, but she's walking pretty like something's not right. She comes, and she's like tearing. And she says, Javier. I stopped. And she says, Javier. I said, what's wrong, Margaret? She said, Javier, someone was stalking my home earlier today. And she's just terrified. And so I said, I have a camera in my house, in front of my house. I can see everything. I said, let's look at the camera. And thank goodness who it was the meter man. But she didn't know. That's how, and thank God it was, again, somebody didn't get, someone didn't die because of the car accident. Thank God it wasn't the meter, thank God it was the meter man. But if it was someone really stalking her, that's what happens when you don't have public safety as number one priority. So I really believe that is timely to put it back on the ballot. It is a good compromise of providing a little less taxes for that, but we have, I think Councilmember Fleming mentioned it, that we are looking everywhere to subsidize public safety out of other areas. We found one, and I'm not going to go to the details because I think the mayor's going to, get the hook on me. But we are finding others because we don't have enough. Even with this, if this passes, we don't have enough. And so we're still finding ways to supplement some of that as well, and working with the schools and other entities to do that. So it's timely, it's necessary, it's required for your own health, peace of mind, and certainly, above all, because that's what you're concerned about, is less money. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to tell a story I've never told in a public forum before. Just to give you a personal reason why I'm interested in this going back to the ballot. A few people here may know, but about 4 years ago, I don't remember when it was, but it's soon enough, somebody held a gun to my son's head. And it didn't happen in Seattle, it didn't happen in Tacoma, it happened 100 yards from here in Homestead Park. The only reason I have a son today is because that person elected not to pull the trigger. That's terrifying. But I'm not here on this dais representing me. I'm here representing the city. And when I went door to door 18 months ago campaigning for this chair, for this seat, the single biggest complaint I heard from our citizens was public safety. Now, not everybody had a gun held to their head. But they did complain about people drag racing up and down Bridgeport. They complained about people breaking into their cars, their garages, their homes. I live in a good neighborhood, and I still had, a couple of years ago, somebody broke into my neighbor's house on Christmas Day and stole their Christmas presents. People like to think that University Place is a better community than our neighboring cities, and honestly, it is. But that doesn't mean that we don't have problems. And the reality is right now, on duty, right now for police, we have 2 officers on duty. We have 1 domestic violence call that requires a 2-officer response by law. That means 34,990-something citizens in our city are uncovered by law enforcement in this city. There was an incident a few weeks ago that directly ties to this. Somebody called into our police about a car theft in progress. There's 2 people sitting there trying to steal the car. And the police started to respond, and then they got waved off to a domestic violence call. Our 2 officers on duty had to respond. Fortunately, in this case, the thieves weren't terribly bright, and they were still there 45 minutes later when the police showed up, and we were able to make an arrest. But how often does a car theft take 45 minutes to an hour? Normally it's 2 minutes and they're done and they're gone. That's the need, and I think people in the city are clear on the need. What I'm hearing is people are not clear on how we solve this problem. Well, we have to have more officers. That's the bottom line. How do we pay for it? Well, honestly, if there's a different way, I would do it. There isn't. I'm a homeowner in this city. I'm paying taxes. I'm not yet on a retirement income, but I am sending 2 kids to college next year. I don't want to pay any more money either. But if there's another way to pay for this, I would. I can't think of one. We've gone through the study sessions. We've done the work. And we might be able to nibble around the edges. We can't nibble around the edges. We need these additional officers because hiring 1 additional officer only solves 1 shift, 1 problem. We have 4 shifts of officers Plus, we have things that they can't do. We've got to address this problem. And now, somebody mentioned this did just go to the voters, and it was just defeated narrowly. The reason I am supporting it going back to the voters is not just the need, but when we did the study sessions with the voters, when we asked them what was going on, it's clear that many voters did not understand the ballot measure. They may have been for it, they may have been against it, I don't know, but it's clear that many just didn't understand the ballot measure, nor how we do city finances. And so what we are doing now is a campaign to better educate the voters on city finances so that they understand what they're voting for or against, as the case may be. And I think we need to listen to the public, though. And Mayor, I'm sorry if I'm going to steal a point you've made in the past. We are listening to the public. The first ballot measure that went out was defeated, so we are putting out a second ballot measure, or we are going to vote on that today, that will be less than the first one. Because some people are very concerned about their income, and rightfully so. So we are trying to take that piece into account by saying we're going to address the need the best we can. We're going to do it with less than what we thought was necessary the first time. But we're going to do it because something is better than nothing. And at this point, that's where I see us. I support sending this measure out to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Well, I want to follow all those very good comments from each of you with a couple of my own as well. And they'll follow probably some of the same themes. So as Councilmember Wood started talking about public budgeting and what that's involving, and people may look at a city budget and see millions and millions of dollars. We look at it as we spend time with it, and we start to understand almost all that dollar, every dollar there, has a different color to it. It comes from a particular source. It is for a particular purpose. You heard earlier tonight we were talking about a stormwater program and how we could fund use of matching funds. That's all we could do with those funds. It's over $1 million in the bank. But we can't use that in police. We absolutely, by law, have to use that for stormwater improvements, and we should. There's a need there. It's collected for that purpose. We spend it for that purpose. It's the way it should be. But when you look at the overall budget, you see a collection of many restricted funds, many funds that don't have the ability to be used for police or just general fund as we usually talk about it. For us, our police department is, one, our highest priority. Two, it's our first largest budget category. In public safety, it is the place we spend the most money. It is millions and millions of dollars. And it needs to be because of the quality of what's required, because of the regulations that it takes, because of the years of experience and professionalism that it takes to have an effective police force, which we do. All of that takes funds. For every new officer for us right now, it's about $240,000 a year is about the cost of one new officer, and that's every year. That's not one time, every year. So now, we have, if you haven't heard, let me tell you, we have the lowest level of officers per population in the state of Washington. There isn't a city that has a fewer number of officers for its population size than us. It's not something we're proud of, but it is the reality. What's more, I'm also told by others that the state of Washington is the lowest ratio of officers in the United States. So we in University Place have the distinction of being the lowest of the low. Not a distinction we want, nor do we deserve. Fortunately, we have good officers. It's a good community. It works, but it just barely works at this point. Now, we could, perhaps by reshuffling deck chairs, by changing other priorities, by not doing things we do now very well, we might be able to squeeze together one more officer someplace perhaps. But it isn't going to change our situation. The only way we can change the situation is if the voters decide they want to pay for more police officers. It's not possible for us to find anywhere near the money within our budget to really change that ratio that I just spoke of. It has to be new revenue. There's no place else to go. And that's just the reality. You end up at the end of the day getting, in fact, what you pay for. It's expensive, it's quality, it's awfully important. And that's what we have to do. Now, the voters of our community may choose not to do it, and that is by all means their choice. We all know this. We had an election in November. 99 people more said no than yes. That was the difference. And I'm listening to those. And we're all trying to listen to that negative vote and see what we can do to change it. As Councilmember Wood mentions, we've reduced this amount. It was, the average home was $24 per month. is the estimate. We've cut back the number of proposed officers. It's now, this proposal we're likely to vote on is $19. That's a 24% reduction, by the way, so it's cut it back. You can say, well, if you needed $24 worth of office, $24 worth of officer a year, you should hang in there and do it. You know what? We need whatever our community can afford, and apparently you don't, as a general rule, apparently you don't want to pay or need to pay in your mind for that rate. So we're cutting it back because we think that that might change a few votes, may change people's mind, and we want to be responsive to what you have told us at the ballot box as well. There were other peculiarities, nothing illegal, just oddities in the turnout in the last election. It was a very large turnout, 13,500 or so voters. That's really big for us, biggest any of us have in memory in terms of turnout. And it wasn't because of this issue. It wasn't because of the police levy, because 1,100 people didn't vote on the police levy. That's an undervote, it's referred to, as you may know. That's a lot of undervotes, much more than any other issue. We think that's probably because people didn't turn the ballot over, frankly. And it's one of the reasons why we wanted to focus on just one question in an election, so people can focus on that and not have all the other chatter that's in the political news and mailbox and the rest to interfere. So they make a decision solely on that particular issue. Well, with all those things in mind, that's what we're getting ready to do. And it's always a question about how much. I don't want to go back out for $24. I think we need to change it, and I'm in favor of 19, and frankly, I would be in favor of 16 if I thought I had more votes, just so we can get through this, because we've been hammering at this for a long time, and the only real solution is for the voters to make resources available. Short of that, it's not going to change our situation, and people really want to have a safer community. They really want to have a level of protection that they think is appropriate. We would like to be able to take care of the improper vehicles that are on the road. We would like to be able to take care of some of the other things like speeding and the rest. But the fact is, right now, our officers have no time for these discretionary items. They are moving from call to call to call, and there's usually 9 more calls waiting for them in the course of their shift. And that just keeps them busy, they head down, and dealing with what's exactly on the dispatch sheet, or screen rather, and working from that. It's a challenging situation. We're glad to have these men and women working for us. They do a good job. We just want more of them. We just need more of them, and we have to get more resource, I believe, to be able to do that. So with that, we're going to move on to a vote, and we're going to see if, in fact, we move this to the ballot. As proposed, it would be, April 27th? 25th, April 25th. I'm doing so well at dates. April 25th. Would be the ballot, and I have described the amount at approximately $19 to the monthly tax to the average household. Oh, I did want to mention one other thing. Excuse me for doing this, Councilmember Keel, but I just wanted to make a point. So you had talked about our share being about 9 cents. You know, it was 9 cents, then 8 cents. Today it's 6 cents out of every tax dollar, because our tax rate keeps dropping because our levy amount only grows by 1%. And so as a result, if the average home went up $500, the amount of a year, in this most recent assessment, the amount of new money coming to the city of University Place would be $30. We get $30 out of that $500 raise. And I just wanted to give you some perspective of that. That's kind of the challenge we were faced with. So in any case, I think we're ready for a vote. And Emmy, would you be kind enough to do a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel? Aye.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
With full conscience, aye.
Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, aye.
Vote result 6-0. Motion passes.
Motion is passed. We'll move it on to the election process. Thank you. All right, and with that, that brings us, I believe, to City Manager report. Mr. Sugg.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I believe Amanda's going to show something on the screen while I talk about this item. There is a contest that Public Works has put together in working with the school districts city will be launching a program called Color It Up, student art contest to solicit artwork to be installed on utility boxes along Cirque Drive between Bridgeport and Grandview. The Public Works Department has consulted with the Curtis High School art teacher in the development of this contest. The flyer will be distributed, this flyer that you see here will be distributed to Curtis Senior and Curtis Junior High School, Charles Wright Academy, Heritage Christian, Narrows View, and Drum, and it will be also featured in the upcoming UP newsletter and displayed on the city's website. The contest will be open to University Place students grades 5 through 12, and the deadline for submission of entries will be April 14th. So we just wanted to bring that to the county, the commission, council, and the community's attention. This is going to be an exciting contest. We've had a lot of luck, good feedback on the wraps that we've done on other boxes that which you see there, that before and after shot. So we hope to get student input on this and make it a good youth project. So with that, Mayor, council
Thank you.
members.
It looks like fun. I wish I had the talent and the age, for that matter, to qualify, but I have neither.
Thank you, Jack.
All right. Well, we'll go to council comments then. Sounds like that's appropriate. Councilmember Keel, would you like to start us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just want to start off with, I had the privilege of last week, I think it was last week, going to City Action Days in Olympia. It's kind of all mushing together. It was a great conference. It was something that Association Washington Cities puts on with our state legislature. And there's a day that we do the hill, the crawl the hill, where we go to different electeds' offices, talking to them about different issues. This year, I met with most of those electeds actually at the hotel. I didn't take the opportunity, have the opportunity to go to their offices, which is really it's a goat rope. I mean, you know, going in there, it's like everyone's stacked up and it's just crazy. I'm talking to the choir over here, but so I didn't get to participate in that, but I did meet with several legislators in the venue where we were held our meetings. So it was really good. A couple of things that I was focused on this time around, obviously, was housing. As board council members know, I'm a member of the AWC board of directors at the state level. And the board is really taking on housing as an issue. The legislation, that the way it's written originally, was not good for cities at all. Basically, the state wanted to take over zoning within all 281 cities and towns. So they thought, in their wisdom, that they could regulate, zoning in Seattle the same way they would regulate zoning in Zillah, which is, two different cities altogether, and they wanted to have one thing kind of fits all, which makes, in my opinion, no sense at all. And so AWC's really pushed back on that very hard. The bad news is the proponents of that legislation thinks that they have the votes to pass it. So AWC's position was negotiating as best we can to soften the blow. And I think we've done that. It's still going to be painful if it does pass, but there were some key things that we were able to get out of that legislation so that it won't be as impactful, not to the city, but to citizens, and to builders and people that are in that space. No question about that. We need more housing, but it's the how you go about doing is what is in question. So there's more to come. If you're interested in that topic, I certainly welcome everyone to call their legislators and others in other districts to talk about this as well. The other big thing that I dealt with down there had to do with broadband, and as council knows too, I'm dealing with broadband at the national level, and so I'm doing some discussions within the state of Washington. And the goal there is really to when you talk about economic development and you talk about access for children and education, many of you have heard the stories about during the pandemic where kids didn't have access to broadband at their homes. They were in their cars with their parents, sitting out in the Starbucks parking lot and McDonald's parking lot, trying to get their homework done. And some of them actually attended school in the car when they were doing it, remotely, which is just unconscionable in my mind. And so I'm leading an effort nationally and also within the state of Washington to work with the telecoms and the cable companies to really do a better job of providing broadband. And my statement is to every home and to every business. And I'm saying symmetrical. Comcast will sell you their line and you can download all the movies. They'll give you bandwidth to download movies, but they don't give you the bandwidth to upload a spreadsheet. And so we need to have both sides of the ledger worked on. So we're working on that. The other topic that I want to say now too is in our last meeting we had a presentation from South Sound 911. And if you all remember, I had a lot of conversations, a lot of questions about that, and I was able to follow up. The executive director did follow up with me with some feedback, and I reached out to to the executive's office as well around that. I've got some questions sent to staff now to do some more research for us and see if hopefully you guys are responding to that. So. Just for my council's sake, when I hear back from staff on my questions, I'll be in a position to talk to you more about how I think we could move forward in looking at South Sound 911 board. Okay, so with that, thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple comments. First, last week I sat in on the Pierce County Regional Council meeting, PCRC. Just a general discussion there was just the agenda for the year primarily. A couple changes. I actually recommended a couple changes to the agenda to try and make the discussion more relevant. The first was moving, they were going to have a discussion on the 1/10 of 1% sales tax that we just talked about a lot about here earlier. They wanted to have that discussion in July, which is way after the fact. It's now been moved up to March, so theoretically it may or may not be more relevant. And then the other one was they want to talk about regional aviation, specifically those new airports they want to for Pierce County. They want to talk about those in November. That's now been moved up to July because at least that way the cities have the opportunity to contribute thoughts and ideas inside the decision cycle instead of after the fact. Javier may have more about that meeting, but that's all I've got discussed. And the last thing, and this is really for city, I just saw in the newspaper this morning, Fircrest is building a whole bunch of new apartments. We just heard about that in this meeting earlier, 389 new units. I am curious I am assuming they've done a traffic impact study, but I would love to know how that's going to impact 27th and Mildred, because that's a lot of new people coming in there, and if we've had that discussion with the city of Fircrest yet. So, and if you don't have that answer, I don't assume you do, but I would like to get that information at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I don't have too much to report tonight, but I am really excited about the wraparound of the utility design wraps. That's going out to our kids in University Place that attend our school. I think that's going to bring a lot of fun to different intersections that have the very boring and, engineered hard surfaces. So I think they'll pop those intersections and make it a lot of fun. And I know we've been talking about it for quite a few years, and I've seen more and more pop around our community center area here. And so they're always fun. They always bring a smile to my face. So I'm excited to see the contest finalists and see some of those wraps, or what our children in our community, their art, their talent, their thoughts about their community as well. So thank you for pursuing that.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember. And Councilmember Fleming.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just got something fun I just want to share with the council, and that is our community Rotary, along with the school district and other local businesses, has a program called Cleanup. It's going to be on April 22nd, and what it's about is They're focusing on getting the community all out together to walk along, clean up the streets, work on cleaning up some of the parks, and then have a big party down at the school, Curtis Junior High, at the end of that event, along with some music and food and what have you. So everyone's invited to attend. Everyone's invited to participate. They can certainly sign up as individuals or as teams, and then they get their medal at the end and have a lot of fun. So more to come on that, but just put that on your radar screen.
Excellent, Councilmember Fleming. That sounds like a great event, a lot of fun. So April 22nd. So
Correct. Starts at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock? Super, good. That would be fun. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Is free coffee, 8 o'clock in the
coffee?
morning?
Just for you, sure.
Thank you. Then I'll show up.
Show up?
I can help you out, Councilmember Wood. The Furcrest development there, Mildred is, the whole street is owned by University Place, so all the permitting for traffic impact on Mildred and 27th is being done by the city of University Place, so whatever we do, we should not complain about because we're in charge of that. So that's that on that. The other one is, as Councilmember Wood mentioned, I was with the PCRC. It was a General Assembly meeting. It was just general, as the word says. And I do appreciate Councilmember Wood's comments on those two things that he mentioned. And sometimes simple things get overlooked, but they're simple now, but they're actually huge issues in the future with the aviation that's going on in Pierce County about the new airport, as well as this 110th. As you can see, we spend a lot of time on it. The other one is, and I'm going to leave most of it to you, Mayor, for the AWC conference, or action days, but I do want to mention just a little bit about my participation with the mayor, with our legislators, and I keyed in with what Councilmember Keel was talking about on the so-called redefining, actually is not rezoning of single-family lots, as you may have it, whether it be vacant or with a single-family home that is zoned right now R1, is being redefined. If the legislation passes, is being redefined to allow fourplex up to 4 units, additional 4 units in certain areas, and then in other certain areas, depending on transit locations, they may be allowed to have up to 6 units. And the reason this is important to understand for whoever's listening, and that is that the normal rezone, we call it rezoning because you're redefining single-family lots, that's normally a local process where we have public hearings. People come out and testify, I don't want my lot rezoned, because if you get zoned up, you could be taxed more. You get assessed at a higher value. And so, unfortunately, the state decided not to have a local process, or the city, they took it out of our hands, and they're doing it, and they're redefining what that is, and to some other restrictions. Along with other issues with that whole scenario, my biggest beef, and which lies with our biggest conversation tonight, was taxation. And that is, this properties, what used to be a single-family lot, was assessed for one home. Once if the legislation passes, it gets assessed for more than one home, 4 units, 6 units. There will be a reevaluation by the county assessor for assessing it for a higher value. Now, that's great if you plan to build the 4 units or 6 units, but if you're 90 years old and you're just wanting to retire in your home, and you heard about this, people that are retired are being taxed out of their homes. Well, this is one more thing that the legislature is about to do. It fights against what they're doing this for. They're doing it for affordable housing. But yet, on the flip side of this, is that they're destroying affordable housing for senior citizens, among other people that, or maybe low income, but they have their home, but they have no intention of ever building another unit. They're just going to have their single-family unit, residence. They had no choice of declining that, and now they're going to be assessed and be taxed more. I did mention that to our legislators when we were visiting them. I asked them if they would at least consider now or soon at the next session to consider requiring the county assessors not to assess the single family under this scenario unless they're built on these units and their properties. If they build on it, go ahead. You took advantage of it. But if you don't build on it, I'm asking them that they would not, they'll be exempt from any additional assessments. So hopefully they listen. If you ever have a chance to ever talk to your legislators, keep that in mind, because even though it passed this time and they didn't correct it, there's next time, next year. And before, too much damage has occurred, and they can make a correction where they can stop the assessors from reevaluating and assessing at higher value on properties that that will not take advantage of that the way they redirected the definition. So with that, for our council members, if you ever run into your legislators, bring that up. I think it's a very important issue. It's important to our citizens, as you heard tonight, about being taxed. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Appreciate that. And I have a few comments as well, and might as well start off with talking about City Action Days, where Mayor Pro Tem and I, along with Councilmember Keel, attended. That was both the conference and then also some legislative calls. On the legislative calls, we did have a chance to visit with Representatives Levitt and Brandon-Kosky. Had a chance to discuss with both of them the city's agenda, such as the issue about the zoning effects of the affordable housing activities with, I believe it's House Bill 1056, and some of our concerns as a community and what effect that has, such as as that's gone through different permeations. I think city staff just created a map you might have seen, and in that map it shows the affected areas in University Place of where we would be, if that were to pass, where sixplexes would be available, because it's within a half mile of parks or schools. There is approximately, I think, looked like less than 5% of the community that was not going to be changed.
I was going to say.
Yeah. It was a very small, basically all of UP gets subject to that if it were to pass in the current form. So we talked about that. We talked about the Blake decision. That's on our legislative agenda, and that looks like there may be some changes there to reinstate the use of drugs as being an illegal activity, at least in certain cases in our state, that would allow law enforcement and others to be able to get a little more control of the situation. We talked about the right of changing the standard by which pursuits are done, so that the automobile thefts in the right situation, they could have a pursuit of a suspected automobile theft. And that also looks like that change is in the works, and hopefully will be giving our police officers the tools that they're used to having or close to it. And we talked further about another item, not on our agenda, but it seemed like it was meaningful for us, which is a discussion about the effects of king tides on Day Island, on Sunset Beach in our community. We've had 15 homes inundated in the process of that. So both our representatives and our senator in Olympia are aware of that. It's on their radar. They're tracking that. They want to be engaged in the event that we have some way that they could provide some help to us there. While I was there, I also had a chance to join in a district-wide call for the 10th Congressional District, and Congresswoman Strickland just happened to be occurring during City Action Days, so took a break from that to make the call. And in that, we also talked about the King Tide event and the Congresswoman's potential help if there was something we need there additionally. So just trying to keep those issues in our community, getting them some daylight, showing the community is behind those, our folks that have been impacted from that, and helping find resources for them to work with that. Other things, I, about 2 weeks ago, attended the Steilacoom Kiwanis Club. And so I was there as the mayor in this particular instance, so got a chance to show them the year in review that we did here in early January. Nice video, went very well, and talk about police services in our community and a few other issues. They're a great group. That Kiwanis Club has, I think it's 200 members. It's huge. And there were about 40 or so in the room, another 30 or so online. It was a pleasure to be part of, and I was glad to have the invitation. And then finally, I have a small gift for you. So this, if you've this on your place setting or whatever it is, dais seat is yes. So I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
So moved.
A motion to extend the meeting until, was 9:30 good?
9:30.
9:30. Motion to extend to 9:30. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Meeting is extended till 9:30. So a small gift, which is a bookmark for Out of Character. The author of Out of Character is my wife's niece, and she's staying with us for a few days while she's on a book tour. So I thought I'd bring you some bookmarks. And there's some in the back in case anybody else is looking for a bookmark. They're by the agendas, and you can help yourself. So, but we're rather proud of her and her first publication. It was fun to go to Barnes & Noble and see her book at Barnes & Noble. It's pretty cool. So we like that. All right, well, we'll get back to our agenda, and we'll start with our study session. So we'll now move into the study session, where West Pierce Emergency Management and the interlocal agreement will be next in our discussion. So, yes.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the study session to pass on the Housing Action Toolkit. Even the 9:30 extension won't cover. It was given an hour. We won't be able to cover that given the time frame. I'd like to make a motion to pass into the next appropriate council meeting on the Housing Action Toolkit number 11.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, then is. And so let's take a vote. Let's see. So right now, we're not talking about this as a tabling motion. Rather, this is a motion to pass. So that is different than a tabling motion somehow, which means I can have discussion. That's.
Oh, I'll make the motion.
I didn't hear that as a table.
Mr. Mayor, I'll call for the question.
There
you go.
Put that to bed.
All right. All right. Okay. All those in favor of removing the Housing Action Toolkit to another meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Okay. Sounds to me like it passes.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. So we'll move on now with the West Pierce Management. Oh, excuse me. Yes, we do. Actually, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. And now that we've been at this for a few hours, I think we'll be back in session at about 8 or so after the hour.
Very good.
discussion, interlocal agreement with West Pierce Fire.
Very good. Thank you so much, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Tonight, before you, I want to introduce your West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition Coordinator. Serena Rotondo is here tonight. We've come to you with a new and renewed ILA, courtesy of Matt Kaiser, your city attorney. We took ownership of the ILA upgrade because we wanted to make sure it had all the good stuff in it. And so we hired our attorney to do it. And so that's our primary purpose to come before you tonight. But we thought it would be a great opportunity to talk a little bit about the coalition, talk about the services and things that are included in the coalition, and give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have. So I'm going to let Serena talk a little bit about what the coalition does.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. So I'm just going to talk about the coalition, what we've done so far, and where we plan to go in the future. So right now, the coalition consists of the City of University Place, the City of Lakewood, the Town of Steilacoom, and then West Pierce Fire and Rescue. The purpose of the coalition is to facilitate the overall coordination of emergency management functions in West Pierce. So that would include the coordination between partner agencies and jurisdictions, coordination of mutual aid, establishment of priorities, damage information analysis, and then plans and trainings is the biggest one right now. So right now we do have some University Place emergency management plans that are already completed. We have the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, and that is basically a roadmap for the response, organization, and recovery following a disaster or an emergency. The Continuity of Operations Plan is the plan that is going to help the City of University Place resume essential operations. We have the Hazard Mitigation Plan completed, and that goes through mitigating the risks that University Place has, and then a lot of grants are dependent on that plan. So we lean on that one a lot when we start looking at the grants for the City of University Place. And then we do have the Emergency Operations Procedures Plan, and then some plans that are in progress that we're working on this year is the Limited English Proficiency Plan to reach those community members following a disaster or an emergency, working on a shelter plan, and a THIRA, which is the Threat and Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment Plan. And again, a lot of grants are going to lean on that plan as well. Working on a recovery plan for the city and the coalition as a whole, a spontaneous volunteer management plan, and a donations management plan, which we are starting to work on this year and then through next year. And then right now we're doing some ongoing trainings. We did our comprehensive emergency management planning training in January for the entire coalition. We will do a continuity of operations plan training in April for the City of University Place. Web EOC is being updated, so updating EOC staff on that system. And then we are also seeking out emergency management opportunities for EOC staff in University Place and bringing the coalition together. So one of those is the Integrated Emergency Management course that happens at EMI. And so that is takes place in Maryland, and we applied with the East Pierce Interlocal Coalition to attend this training at EMI, so that way our West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition can work with East Pierce Interlocal Coalition and start to build those relationships. We submitted the application at the beginning of this month, and so we're waiting to hear back about the application status. But review is completed by FEMA in May, so we're hopeful for that training. And then the coalition, we meet every other week to talk about what's going on in emergency management, where we're at in our plans and our trainings, and what the City of University Place needs from West Pierce as far as emergency management goes. And then we also have monthly regional emergency management stakeholder calls, and that includes a variety of different emergency managers within the region. And we do have some University Place representatives, which includes Charles Wright, the Pierce County Wastewater Treatment, and then the University Place School District.
So would you like questions during the presentation or towards the end?
Sure. We can take the questions now if you'd like.
Thank you. Curiosity, why Charles Wright?
Well, we invite any large, school or any large business or service provider within the city to participate in the coalition. And really what it does is just allows them to hear what the city's doing, how the city's planning, and then to tap into some of the resources or information that the coalition can offer.
Okay, I was just curious because we have other large schools
And they
in
participate
UP
also.
school.
Yeah, and anyone is
I'm sorry,
invited.
in UP.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone is invited to participate in the coalition call.
So do you reach out to all those entities, or is it up to them to seek you out and ask about that?
There are times when they reach out to us for various things, and then we invite them to be a part of it. But we certainly, we don't have a process where we don't have a list of people that we call, but we certainly invite anyone who's interested in participating.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I did have a question for you too. So you had mentioned training in terms of EMI. Is that what sort of categories do you have? Policymakers in that? Do you have operations? Do you have first responders? Who are the folks that you get to do that with?
So the training at EMI, we do like to bring a variety of different people from the coalition. Specifically, if we're talking about, I'm just going to go back one slide, the Integrated Emergency Management course, there are a limited amount of slots, and so we would be splitting that with East Pierce. And so once we hear back from FEMA on if we've been accepted, then we would figure out how we're going to split up the spots equally between the West Pierce Coalition and then University Place specifically.
So the intent at this point is for it to be a coalition training as opposed to integration of several different geographic areas, or?
Correct. We want it to be a coalition training, mostly leaning on EOC staff that would be working together within the coalition. And what we're looking at as far as the IEMC specifically is working on a Lahar with the East Pierce Interlocal Coalition. That way we can figure out how to work together should something like that happen. But we do want to figure out a way to possibly bring council members as well, because the policymakers are going to play a big role in that. It would just depend on, again, how many slots we are allowed.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, and the policymakers do help build, as they develop understanding and trust and experience, then it just makes the process run smoothly and such. So, good, thank you. Okay, please, we'll probably have more questions as time goes on. So, go ahead.
Okay, I was just curious on the funding. Can you explain a little about the funding and how this program is going to be supported with the EMPG? Is that grant dollars that the city of University currently has will be the total expense to help support the coalition?
Yeah, I don't have the cost breakdown with me tonight, but the cost is, I believe, 60/40. So the coalition partners pay 60%. So Town of Steilacoom, City of Lakewood, City of University pays 60%, and then West Pierce Fire and Rescue pays 40% of all the costs. And all of the EMP dollars from each of those jurisdictions is also dedicated in that fund.
Okay. And this emergency management program grant dollars, is that what that means?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure I got the
acronym.
Right,
I
acronym
know.
correct. All right, now I understand. Okay, thank you. One other question I have is just a definition of this word, pre-damage. So to me, damage has already happened. So it's pre is
before.
What does that mean? You know, instead of going around and seeing some of the potential hazards, what does pre-damage mean? I understand post-damage because that's pretty self-evident.
Where did you find the pre-damage?
On page 2.
On the operational plan?
It is.
Or on the ILA?
Page 1, page 2. Okay. So here's this, here's page 1, page 2, number 2, down to J.
Okay, that's a Matt Kaiser question.
Okay. Oh, right.
I was trying to do a word search for pre-damage, and I couldn't find it. Isn't that one of the original clauses? I don't think we added that clause.
Okay.
Well, my recollection, without doing a red line trace, I think that may have been part of the original ILA. What you have in front of you tonight is an amendment to the ILA.
Okay.
And pre-damage assessment reports, actually, even though she said it's a Matt Kaser question, I think it's actually probably more of a Jake.
Okay, let me see.
But she's asking about
Okay.
the coordination on the
Well, I guess so, but you know.
Lisa, do you want to? Okay, yeah.
The other attorney.
Yeah.
Right. So pre-disaster, when you see pre-disaster, a lot of times in emergency management, it's talking about pre-damage assessments, so how things were. So threats potentially that could damage. That's what pre-assessment is.
Okay, I understand pre-assessments, right. Okay, so this is essentially the same, except they call it pre-damage. All right.
Local agreement, and so if you have any questions about the actual coalition, we could answer those, and then we can really, the agreement itself is, you know, pretty self-explanatory in the context of the agreement you have in your packet. Essentially just adding some guardrails to determine how costs are allocated if we have an emergency that crosses jurisdictions within the coalition. We felt that it was vulnerable. And so with the addition of Stillicum, we wanted to add those guardrails, and we had Matt, add those pieces to that so that we would then make sure that the city was protected. And so that's the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate it. So this coalition, the question is, I had it and it was right in front of me, now I'm losing it, but how are we all working together? I mean, when you talk about, here you call it UP, it's the coalition, interlocal with University Place, but then there's the other groups here. So why is there the distinction with us and University Place and the rest of them?
Well, University Place is a member of the coalition.
Okay.
And so you remember before we had this emergency management coalition, prior to 2019, we were with the county. And so all of our EMPG dollars went to Pierce County Emergency Management, and we were lumped into sort of that whole county-wide. We were approached by the coalition at the time, which was Lakewood and West Pierce, and to look for west of I-5, right? If a big emergency happens, where do you think Pierce County will be?
Yeah,
Not
here.
UP,
Yeah,
not
right.
UP, right?
Right.
So they approached us with a plan. We could do a better job at preparing these plans and serving our citizens and preparing our citizens. And we've already seen that. Then we got hit with the pandemic shortly after we signed on, worked through that with our partners. And then, of course, King Tides, all of those things were able to do the sandbagging operations and some of the various things that we're able to kind of collate together very quickly. It just makes us more nimble. It gives us, I think it serves the citizens better. And so when Serena talks about UP, she's all of these services that are available to the other partners in the coalition are University Place also. So they're interchangeable.
So everybody gets what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
So now, has everybody else agreed to this? Have they already all signed? Are we the last to sign on? Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Wood.
So I just wanted to comment here. I am very, very happy the upgrade includes the creation of a THIRA. The county and the state and everybody's done a whole lot of work on lahars and earthquakes and stuff. But as the recent King Tide events have shown, I don't think anybody's planned for a King Tide on Day Island or anywhere else in our coastal communities. And I'm assuming and hoping that that THIRA will include very local type things, because not only is it good to just identify that we've identified it's a hazard already because we've had people with flooded houses, but actually being able to document it means we can now take that document as supporting evidence to go for grant funding to do mitigation. And that's why I'm very glad we have this as part of the upgrade. And I just want to say thank you for that. And I do have one quick question, and I'm going to show my emergency management age. That used to be called continuity of operations and continuity of government. My understanding is continuity of government is a term that has fallen out of favor. Is that portion or that subject included in our continuity of operations plan, or is that just something we just aren't doing right now?
I will say, right now it is just the continuity of operations plan. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think it includes any continuity of government in it.
Okay.
Our advisor over there from the staff table is telling us that it is part of the COOP plan.
It is part of the COOP
Yes.
plan. Excellent, thank you.
So I'm just trying to decide if we should let them finish the presentation, but are we done, or, okay, then Councilmember Keel.
So how does, how are we in this group, how are we treating the electeds? I mean, West and East Pierce actually have an elected board, and then we have, the cities have an elected board. How is that interaction happening?
Well, part of the upgrade and adding the boundaries to this ILA was to protect cities and city government with those decisions that, you know, depending on the scale of the emergency and how over the border it got, you know, to give the policymakers the ability to make decisions for those cities. The West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition itself has a policy board, which is the city managers of each of the cities, town manager for Steilacoom, and West Pierce Fire Chief. And that board meets quarterly, and they make decisions, changes to the ILA and changes to larger scale items would have to be unanimous on the board. So is there any other in the ILA that I'm missing that is policy related?
The one other policy, I just want to kind of piggyback off, first of all, what Hale's talked about, and then there's one other change that's just worth a brief touch. Part of the changes for the ILA and the guardrails that she's talking about initially started as a discussion amongst the West Pierce board, or the Emergency Management Board itself, and trying to recognize, well, wait a second, at what level should these discussions be with the board, and at what level should these guardrails, to use the term, should be done and kept with the local jurisdictions. I mean, we've been in front of the council on a number of times over the last couple of years, and this council has been pretty clear. It likes to maintain its individual authority, but it also recognizes the value in being a good regional partner. So we wanted to make sure that that protection was there, and it transcended not just the members of this council, but the other councils as well, and then the people who take those seats thereafter. So we wanted to make sure that that was there. The other, rather than just some policy manual, and then we'll send a bill and sort it out after a big scale emergency, we wanted to make sure that that was there. The other one that, in terms of a touch, that we wanted to make sure was tuned up was the staffing and the resources that addressed this. And that was one of the original impetuses. Hills can correct me if I'm wrong on the number. Originally it was what? 1.5 FTE? And then there was a thought of increasing that to 2.0 FTE. To actually do that, that would require a lap amongst all the city councils and the town councils and the fire district board to make that 0.5 FTE adjustment. We said, look, this is going to get real goofy real fast. You have individuals on that management board that are answerable to those electeds.
Okay, good. Say, Matt, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment while we see if there's a motion to extend the meeting for 15 more minutes.
Mayor, make a motion to extend the meeting to 9:40.
That's 10 minutes.
No, how about 9? Okay, 9:45. 9:45.
Second.
Motion and a second to extend to 9:45. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
I have to take that again. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Extend to 9:15, or 9:45 rather, excuse me.
So you were talking, Matt?
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that, you know, those protections were there. The councils had a touch. and that a lot of those conversations were had on the front end rather than, in a recovery type phase situation. Well, what do we do? Who's responsible for what? And then you have sort of the interjurisdictional sniping that might accompany, when bills start coming due. So that's where this process ultimately came out of.
Okay. Yeah, and just to, if I could just restate my question differently, I want to make sure there's this clarity when we talk about what happens in UP, and then there's the council with the elected body. But also, West Pierce operates in UP as well, and they've got an elected body. And if we're talking about an emergency, West Pierce is actually providing the staffing to do around it. So I'm just trying to make sure that we got the lines clear about.
Well, and I think that's a fair question.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm going to approach it from a slightly different angle, though, too. So let's say the West Pierce employees are providing some sort of assistance to us. The question is, now do they become our employees in the event of something happens? I think the answer to that is no, they're not our employees. And we wanted to make sure that that was built in and recognized on the front end as we started.
Okay.
Among other things.
Yeah. So before I go to Councilmember Wood, Councilmember Keel, you have something else I was going to do?
I'm good now, thank
you. Okay, thank you. So I am trying to scratch my head a little bit over the governance side of this. So a unifying force, with one exception, is West Pierce. They serve most of the cities, but not all the cities. Stillicum has its own independent fire department, at least last I heard. And all, don't they? Are they in West Pierce now?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, congratulations. Gosh, I thought they used to have a combined, fire and police, public safety folks, that they don't do that anymore. Okay, all right. So we do have one unifying structure from that side of it. But then how we deal with the governance now, emergency governance is, for the elected body, is vital. So we have to have civil oversight. We know that. But at the same time, it is fairly limited once the emergency is declared. So, because you have 4 jurisdictions to fuss over, depending upon the details. So, okay. I guess I'd like to know more about how that's anticipated to work. So.
With respect to, for example, we just survived the recent COVID emergency, and our council has terminated that as of 3 months ago now? 3 months ago. And although West Pierce provided, intergovernmental cooperation with respect to that, we still, as with Lakewood and Stillicum, maintained our own individual authority with an ILA already in effect that we didn't say, as a result of our declared emergency, West Pierce gets to call the shots within our 8 square miles. So, I mean, that doesn't seem to change.
So and Pierce County Department of Emergency Management, their role is?
They are still as much of a coach as they were before. So we can activate. If we activate, they will activate. If we request whatever, they'll still back us up. So we receive all the services we had before, only we're not paying them for services.
They're a conduit for services, materials, and things, but not necessarily the boots on the ground part of it. So
exactly, they don't get the EMPG funding any longer, and we're not paying them for it.
Okay. So that's still there, but West Pierce is responding for us and with us. So okay, Public Works folks and police. So. All right, I think I've sort of have it, but still wondering about it, some sort of joint declaration for, the attack of the alligators or whatever it might be. Yeah.
One last question, Mayor.
Sure. Actually, Councilmember Wood is next up.
Actually, I was just pointing out we had 1 minute. I was not raising to talk, so I have no further comment.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
So you told us before, but I've forgotten. Who's the fiduciary agent? Do we have
You mean
that?
who's our seat on the board?
No. Who? When we pay all the money into this thing and we pay the bills, who's doing that?
Actually, the Lakewood office does, I believe, they do all of the grant process to make sure that the EMPG funding comes in.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember McCluskey, a question?
Okay, thank you. So the city of Lakewood or the?
City of Lakewood.
City of Lakewood, oh, okay. So when the event on Day Island occurred, and so that was the UP Coalition, right? Was it this
West Pierce Emergency
West
Management
Pierce
Coalition. Yep.
coalition, but not identified as that? It
We
was
don't have coat, they don't have like Lakewood coat in their car they can put on.
Okay, yeah, because when the citizen asked who responded, I said, where's West Pierce? And then I said, then I was told, no,
Right.
UP Coalition.
Well,
So-
West Pierce wearing a jacket, but,
Yes.
wearing their West Pierce uniform, acting as University Place Coalition.
Coalition,
Yeah.
within the ILA, within this agreement.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that happened in Stillicum, then that would be the Stillicum.
And they would still be wearing their West Pierce jackets.
West Pierce
Yep.
jackets. All right, now I'm clear, thank you. All right.
Okay. So, other questions, other comments, or? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine is, I think, a little bit more simpler. On the increased participation of UP and Silicon stakeholders, I don't see, maybe I should have turned the page just in case. Was there something else in the back? Nope. I don't see, or maybe it's not necessary, but I would imagine all these people have a role in an emergency situation, for one reason or another. And I'm thinking about, when I see utilities, I see Puget Sound Energy, which is a major provider in an emergency. I would imagine that, something like that can be quite devastating. It seems like they should be very well informed and part of this participation as a stakeholder, as well as telecoms. Because, as you know, without our phone and internet, we're dead in the water. Nobody can communicate. So I would imagine that they would be as a stakeholder. Are they not for a reason?
They are on the stakeholder. At my recommendation, we only listed a few that were in University Place. That's just a very, very short list of the
Okay.
stakeholders.
Yeah, so that's fine. If
Yeah,
they are.
yeah, no,
Okay.
we in fact, we toured, Chief and I toured the TPU facilities after the attack on where they.
Substations.
Yes, the substation attack. We were able to go and kind of get a security tour to be better informed about how to protect those security things. So yeah, we're definitely dialed in with the utility and having those discussions.
Thank you.
So is there anything, have you covered the subjects you wanted to with us? Okay. Then I know we don't currently have an amount. So that is to say, while there's a formula for costs, there's not an amount to plug into that formula. Is that correct?
There's no budget adjustment. There's no cost. It's simply approving the ILA.
It's a text amendment to the ILA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, so we have the information necessary to be able to consider this if we choose to consider it formally. So, council, are we ready to? Yeah. Okay. We'll get this program for an upcoming agenda. So.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate you hanging out with us.
Are we adjourned?
We're just about, so.
We have 5 more minutes.
All right, well, I think that wraps up the agenda for this evening, and unless there's any objections, we're adjourned.
All right.
Now we are.